Chapter 793. There were 3 people sitting in a huge hall in the Radiant Saint Hall. One of them sat on the main seat. He was an old man with platinum hair and black hair on both sides. He was filled with a strange bearing. He was the veteran saint of the Radiant Saint Hall, Saint Samuel. To the left of Saint Samuel, there was a man who seemed to be less than 30 years old. His brows were sharp and his eyes were as bright as the stars. His face was chiseled and his golden hair was as dazzling as flames. This young man was none other than the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex Bader, who had almost died at the hands of Gray. To the right of Saint Samuel, there was an old man. The old man's appearance was ordinary, but he had a pair of extremely sharp eyes. It was as if nothing could hide from his eyes. There was a red vertical mark between the old man's eyebrows. It was as if there was a crack between the old man's eyebrows. The old man was the current saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei In. He was a veteran saint who was no weaker than Saint Samuel. Wei Wei In, why do you have the time to come to my Radiant Saint Hall? Saint Samuel asked as he looked at Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye clan. Do you think I want to come? My Sacred Eye clan has been implicated by you this time. Because of your commission, we have actually offended a person who has grasped 3 laws before he has even comprehended them. Wei Wei's voice was filled with anger and dissatisfaction. He was indeed furious this time. Just a commission had inexplicably offended a person with limitless potential who had grasped 3 laws before he had even comprehended them. If something went wrong, his clan might even be in danger of being wiped out. It was obvious how depressed he was right now. Samuel, don't tell me your Radiant Saint Hall already knew about this and purposely did not reveal it to my Sacred Eye clan in order to drag my Sacred Eye clan into this. He looked at Saint Samuel with an unfriendly expression. Sir Wei Wei In, please calm down. Before we fought Gray Fergus, my Radiant Saint Hall really did not know that he had grasped 3 laws. I can guarantee this on the reputation of the Radiant Saint Hall. The leader of the Radiant Temple, Alex, smiled bitterly. His severed left arm from the battle with Gray had already recovered. Not only that, but even his lost lifespan had recovered. One of the derivative abilities of the laws of light was to eliminate abnormal states. Although he did not possess this derivative ability, the other people in the Radiant Saint Hall possessed it. Therefore, he recovered from that strange state and returned to his peak state. Although he had recovered from his peak condition, every time he thought about that battle, his heart palpitated. If Saint Samuel had not saved him, he might have died in that battle. He would have been killed by an Annihilation class person. He would have become the most frustrated Rule class elite. I believe you've heard of how dangerous that battle was. I almost died at the hands of Gray Fergus. If I really wanted to plot against the Sacred Eye tribe and drag them down, I wouldn't have to risk my life, right? Hearing the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall's words, Alex Wei Wei's unfriendliness faded slightly. He also felt that no matter how crazy a person was, they would not treat their life as a joke. He looked at Saint Samuel and asked, let's not talk about this for now. How does the Radiant Saint Hall plan to solve this problem? The force that attacked the other party wanted to lure them out of the space-time temple. You know the result. They did not manage to lure them out. Saint Samuel's face was calm. He did not panic at all. Clearly, he already had a plan. And in the space-time temple, there is Koro. If you want to force a move, you will have to pay a great price. Fortunately, Koro does not have much lifespan left. He will pass away in less than 5 years. My Radiant Saint Hall is prepared to attack the space-time temple at that time. 5 years is too long. Facing Saint Samuel, who looked like he had victory in his hands, Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye tribe shook his head. We don't necessarily have 5 years. What do you mean? Saint Samuel looked at Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye tribe in confusion. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex, was the same. They were keenly aware that Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye tribe must know something that they did not know. Just a few days ago, I observed Gray Fergus. If I am not wrong, he is probably at the 6th level of the Annihilation grade. We may not have 5 years now. Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye tribe said solemnly. He has reached the 6th level of the Annihilation grade so quickly. How can it be so fast? Even if he has continuously taken level 6 auxiliary cultivation elixirs, it should not be so fast. The leader of the Radiant St. Hall, Alex, was shocked. Half a year ago, when he fought with Grey Fergus, although he had the combat power of the rule class, in terms of realm, he should still be at the 3rd level of the Annihilation grade. In just half a year, he had reached the 6th level of the Annihilation grade. This speed of improvement was too shocking. Do you think he is an ordinary person? Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye tribe sneered. Even if an ordinary person continuously takes level 6 auxiliary cultivation elixirs, it is impossible to have such a speed of improvement. However, this Grey Fergus is obviously not an ordinary person. His cultivation talent is probably beyond the ordinary saint and saintess. If that is the case, then so be it. What I'm really worried about now is whether he will break through to the rule class within 5 years. Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye tribe sounded solemn. It can't be. To break through to the rule class from the 6th level of the Annihilation grade in 5 years is impossible. The leader of the Radiant St. Hall, Alex, was shocked. He had spent 1,000 years to go from the 6th level of the Annihilation grade to the rule class. He found it hard to imagine that someone could break through to the rule class in 5 years. That is an ordinary person, but is he an ordinary person? Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye tribe said coldly. Samuel, what do you think? It is indeed impossible to break through to the rule class in 5 years, but it is not impossible. It has happened before in history, although it was done with the help of special items. Saint Samuel's face became solemn. It looks like we can't keep waiting like this. We have to take the initiative to attack and work together with our 2 Saint-class forces to wipe out the Space-Time Temple and this Grey Fergus. In terms of combat power, the 2 Saint-class forces combined would definitely surpass the Space-Time Temple. The reason why they had not worked together to attack the Space-Time Temple from the beginning was that they were afraid of Saint Kuluo's counterattack before his death. They were afraid that the losses would be too great. Now, they had to take the risk. I agree. This is also why I am here this time. Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye tribe nodded. Which rule should I learn first? In the wooden house of the dimension, Grey was deep in thought. If it were an ordinary person, it was obvious what rule power they should learn after reaching the 6th level of the Annihilation grade. After all, they only had 1 rule power. However, he was different. He had 4 rule powers. At this time, he had to choose carefully which rule he should learn to break through to the rule class. If there is a rule power that I'm most familiar with, it should be the time rule power and the space rule power. After all, these 2 rule powers have been obtained for a long time. So if I want to choose the rule power to learn, I should choose between these 2. Of the 2 rules, the time rule power was obtained the earliest, and the space rule power was obtained slightly later. Logically, I should choose the time rule power, but the space rule power. In the end, Grey chose the space rule power as the rule to learn. He did not choose the time rule power that he had obtained the earliest. Instead, he chose the space rule power that he had obtained slightly later. The reason was because of the Book of Space Rule. The Book of Rule was the carrier of rule blood skills and secret skills. It recorded the related blood skills and secret skills that directly led to the rule class. However, the Book of Rule was not as simple as the carrier of the blood skills and secret skills. It also contained something more important than the blood skills and secret skills. This thing was the comprehension of the rule class elites of the past. This comprehension was poured into the book by the rule class elites of the past. When someone held the Book of Rule to learn the corresponding rule, it would trigger the resonance of this comprehension. The nomological abilities possessed by every rule-level expert were different. Even the same rule had all sorts of differences, just like how there were no 2 leaves in the world that were exactly the same. However, through this resonance, the person who learned the rule power could be inspired and used as a reference from the comprehension of the rule class elites of the past. This would speed up their own comprehension. This was the most important part of the Book of Rule. Chapter 794. What a shame about the Curse Rule Book. Back then, the rule class elite from Sorcerer Temple had been targeted by Saint Hunters. Even if he had died, he had wanted to bring the rule book back because of the knowledge contained in the rule book. Grey had learned about the rule book's use from the Time and Space Temple's library. He had not known about it before. Because of that, he did not value the Curse Rule Book too much. He did not ask Sorcerer Temple for the Curse Rule Book back. Now that he thought about it, he regretted it. Gray thought about the rule book's secret skill. He ran through all the details in his mind. He now had a general understanding of the secret skill. Under normal circumstances, aside from rule class elites, ordinary people, even if they were annihilation class elites, would not be able to sense the rule book that was everywhere around them. This secret skill was a way to increase the power of the soul's senses. It could let the user feel the rule book that was everywhere around them. Then, they could choose the rule book that corresponded to them. Gray took out the space rule book from his space item. He held it in his hands and started to use the secret skill. Buzz. After using the secret skill, Gray's soul started to vibrate at a certain frequency. With the vibration, his soul felt like it had been extended. It became very sensitive. To the soul, the body had the ability to protect it. It also had the ability to shackle it. It protected the soul, but at the same time, it limited the soul's abilities. Now, the shackles had been broken by the secret skill. It was not that the soul had left the body and escaped the shackles of the body. The secret skill had built a bridge between the soul and the outside world. Even if the soul was in the body, it could still sense outside. Extending his perception out of his physical body, Gray immediately felt that the world was different. What appeared in front of him was no longer empty. Instead, there were countless densely packed lines. It was a strange world. The world was made up of countless colorful lines. Some of the lines were entangled, some crossed, and some were parallel. Among the many lines, Gray focused on a silver line. The silver line was sometimes vertical and sometimes curved. It was everywhere. Sometimes it was entangled with other lines. The silver line was the outer appearance of the space rule book. To understand the space rule book, one needed to understand the rule book's lines. Buzz. Gray's perception probed these silver law lines. As Gray stimulated the spatial law, the law book in his hand changed. A dazzling silver light permeated the air. As his perception probed, Gray easily sensed many insights from the book. These comprehensions were the comprehensions of one spatial law level powerhouse after another. Gray probed the comprehension of one of the space law powerhouses. This space rule powerhouse's space rule ability leaned towards attacking. He did not have the ability to teleport or open up space, but he had the ability to trigger terrifying destructive power. He could slash out invisible blades that could tear space apart, tearing the space apart along with his enemies. It could also trigger a spatial storm and use the shattered spatial fragments to shatter the enemy. He could also set up spatial blades around himself. Once an enemy approached, they would collide with the spatial blades and be sliced into pieces. It's the complete opposite of my spatial ability. A moment later, Gray broke away from this space law powerhouse's comprehension. The other party's comprehension was not of much help to him because the other party's space rule ability was extremely incompatible with his. It could be said that they were two extremes of space rule ability. Gray continued to probe the comprehension of another space law powerhouse. This was the comprehension of a space law powerhouse with both offensive and defensive abilities. Among the other party's space law ability, there was a coordinate transfer derivative ability. This derivative ability could transfer anything, including oneself. It could transfer mountains, islands, and even an enemy's attack to the enemy. This derivative ability could not only be used for life-saving, but also for combat. It could be said that the stronger the enemy's attack, the stronger its attack ability would be. Of course, this strength was not unlimited. It could not exceed the upper limit of the coordinate transfer ability. The third one, the fourth one, the seventh one. Gray checked the comprehension of these space law powerhouses. There were a total of 7 space law powerhouses comprehensions recorded in the Book of Space Law. In other words, this Book of Space Law had passed through the hands of 7 space law powerhouses. He was now checking the comprehension of the 7th space law powerhouse. Gray's space law ability leaned toward the auxiliary type and did not have powerful offensive methods. The 7th space law powerhouse he was checking was such an existence. Like Gray, the other party also had the ability to teleport and open up space. However, he did not know if the other party had obtained the time law ability to open up a plane. He did not have a spatial barrier ability like Gray's, but he had the ability to escape into the spatial crevices and make attacks ineffective. Apart from that, the other party also had an ability to create chaotic space in a range. To put it simply, he could create a large number of spatial channels and connect two places that should not have been connected. Through this method, he could trap the enemy and make the enemy only be able to circle in this space but not leave. Space Maze. This space law powerhouse called this derivative ability a space maze. It meant that it was like a maze and one could never leave. Seeing this derivative ability, Gray suddenly had an epiphany and abruptly stopped his comprehension of the space law. He then used his space law ability. A wave of spatial fluctuations spread out. There was no change in the wooden house or the surrounding area, at least on the surface. However, as a user of space law, Gray knew that this space had changed. Whoosh! He walked toward another room connected to this one, but when he passed through the door and reappeared, a strange change occurred. He did not arrive at another wooden house, but instead appeared outside the wooden house. In that instant, he seemed to have used his teleportation ability and left the wooden house. In fact, he did not use his teleportation ability. He just walked normally and was already outside the wooden house. This was undoubtedly a manifestation of the space maze. Like the space law powerhouse, he also had the derivative ability of the space maze. It was just that it had never been discovered. Inspired by the seventh space law powerhouse's comprehension, he unearthed this derivative ability. Chapter 795. The fourth derivative ability. After removing the spatial maze, Gray was very satisfied with the fourth derivative ability he had obtained. Although it was not an offensive derivative ability like the other derivative abilities, it was a very practical derivative ability. This was a derivative ability similar to St. Koro's Phantom Space. It also had the effect of trapping the enemy. As long as the enemy was trapped in the spatial maze, it was almost impossible for them to leave. In the following time, Gray immersed himself in the comprehension of the spatial laws. He would spend a lot of time comprehending the spatial laws every day. He did not discover any new derivative abilities, but his comprehension of the spatial laws was increasing every day. At least a few decades. After several days of comprehension, he came to a conclusion. If he wanted to fully comprehend the spatial laws, he would need at least a few decades. With St. Koro's condition, he can't last a few decades. Gray furrowed his brows. Although he had the super memory ability and the comprehension of the law experts in the Book of Rules as a reference, comprehending the spatial laws was not something that could be done overnight. Conservatively speaking, he would need at least a few decades to fully comprehend the spatial laws and become a law. A few decades to fully comprehend a law and become a law was not a long time. Even the most talented people would need at least a few hundred years. For example, the Temple Lord of the Radiant Saint Temple had spent 1,000 years. A few decades was really not a long time for him. But now, he did not have a few decades at all. St. Koro's body could only last a few years at most. After a few years, he would definitely pass away. At that time, the Space-Time Temple without a veteran saint would definitely not be a match for the Radiant Saint Temple. Moreover, the Sacred Eye race might be added to the list of opponents. I heard that there are some precious magic herbs that could be refined into level 7 magic potions that can greatly increase the speed of comprehending laws. Unfortunately, these magic herbs are extremely precious level 7 magic herbs. Not to mention that I don't have them. Even if I did, I would not be able to find a level 7 alchemist master who can refine them. Gray shook his head helplessly. He ended his morning comprehension and left the plane. Rumble, rumble. As soon as he returned to the outside world, Gray was shocked by what he saw. The entire space-time temple was protected by a hemispherical barrier that ordinary people could not see. It was known as the strongest defensive spatial barrier. At this moment, a large number of dazzling lights were hitting the spatial barrier. Among them, there was a golden light and a platinum light that were thicker than a mountain peak, causing him to feel a strong sense of dread. Under the large amount of dazzling light, fine cracks could be seen on the surface of the space barrier, which was known as the strongest defense, and it could collapse at any time. It was not that the space barrier's defense was not strong enough, but that the attack it was facing at this time was too strong. The Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan, Gray's face was ashen. With his eyesight, he could see the densely packed figures in the sky. Some of them had platinum swords on their clothes, while others had golden vertical eyes on their clothes. They were clearly the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. Sophia, Gray was anxious. He teleported and appeared in Sophia's courtyard. However, he did not find Sophia. He leapt onto the roof and looked around. He discovered that almost everyone had gathered at the edge of the space-time temple. He teleported and appeared in the crowd. After searching through the crowd, he finally found Sophia, who was dressed in purple female battle attire and had a face full of worry. Gray. Sophia forced a smile when she saw Gray, but she could not hide the worry on her face. With the strength of the space-time temple, it could be said that it was very difficult for them to win against two saint-level organizations. Once the spatial barrier was broken, the space-time temple would probably be destroyed. If the situation doesn't look right, immediately teleport away. Gray naturally understood the situation before him. He took off the purple ring on his finger and put it on Sophia's finger. He said sternly, "Gray, what about you?" Gray forcefully put the ring on her finger. Sophia blushed slightly. Although she knew that Gray had no intention of proposing, she still could not help but feel her heart beat faster. "Don't worry, I have the ability to teleport. If I want to leave, no one can stop me." Gray shook his head slightly. "Elder Gray, Lord Saint and the Temple Master have asked you to go over." At this moment, a disciple of the space-time temple hurried over and said while panting, "Got it." After giving Sophia a slight nod, Gray followed this disciple of the temporal temple and saw the dignified Saint Kaluo as well as the 10 temporal temple bigwigs. "Elder Gray, you can see the situation now. The opponent has 3 law-level experts. 2 of them are veteran law-level experts, and the other is the Temple Master of the Radiant Temple, a newly advanced law-level expert. With the help of the Sacred Hall's runic array, Lighter needs to stop the Temple Master of the Light Temple, while you need to stall the Sacred Eye clan Saint Wei Wei until I kill Saint Samuel. Are you confident?" Saint Koro asked. "Although my strength has increased compared to half a year ago, the opponent is a veteran law-level expert after all. I can only say that I'll do my best." Gray smiled bitterly. With his current strength, he was confident that he could kill the Temple Master of the Radiant Temple, but against a veteran law-level expert, he really did not have much confidence. "Just do your best." Saint Koro sighed. He also knew that with Gray's strength at the 6th level of the destruction grade, it would be too much for him to fight a veteran law-level expert. However, with the current situation, this was the only way. He looked at the Temple Master of the Space-Time Temple, Lighter, and asked, "Lighter, what about you? Are you confident?" The Temple Master of the Space-Time Temple, Lighter, was a middle-aged man with purple hair. When he heard Saint Koro's question, he smiled bitterly and answered, "Like Elder Gray, I can only do my best. After all, the opponent is a law-level expert." Hearing the Temporal Temple's Temple Master Lighter's reply, the group of powerhouses frowned. Apart from Saint Koro, who was confident, Gray and Lighter were not. It was just too difficult to win this battle. "I have a helper on Temple Master Lighter's side. He should be able to assist you." Gray also frowned when he heard Lighter's answer. However, with a thought, he came up with an idea. He waved his hand and summoned the law-level bird beast. With the battle prowess of a law-level bird beast's body, it was naturally unable to contend against a law-level expert. However, it would not be a problem for it to assist from the side. Last time, when he fought the Temple Master of the Radiant Temple, he did not even have the time to use the law-level bird beast. He had already forced the Temple Master of the Radiant Temple into dire straits, so he did not use it. However, this time, the law-level bird beast was unable to participate in the battle against a veteran saint. It was extremely suitable for it to join the battle between Lighter and the shopkeeper of the Radiant Temple. Law-level corpse control. Seeing the huge body of the law-level bird beast, the heads could not help but be overjoyed. Gray actually had the means to control corpses. With the battle prowess of this law-level bird beast, coupled with the battle prowess of the Space-Time Temple Master Lighter, using the Space-Time Temple Runic Array, it should not be a problem for them to contend against the Temple Master of the Radiant Temple. Gray, you actually have such a trick up your sleeve. St. Koro's eyes were also filled with surprise. In this case, 2 of the 3 strongest forces were already in the bag. Crack! At this moment, there was a crisp sound in the sky. Gray looked up and saw countless cracks spreading on the spatial barrier. In the end, it could no longer bear it and completely collapsed. With the spatial barrier gone, the Space-Time Temple's last defensive measure had completely disappeared. There was no longer any gap between the Space-Time Temple, the Radiant Temple, and the Sacred Eye Clan. Kill, leave no one alive. Saint Samuel and Saint Wei Wei, and of the Sacred Eye Clan, were filled with killing intent. Then, they saw the people behind them pounce on the people of the Space-Time Temple like blood beasts hunting for food. Rumble, rumble, rumble. An elder of the Space-Time Temple collided with an elder of the Radiant Temple, and a terrifying destructive force permeated between the two. Whoosh! Suddenly, a terrifying light attacked the elder of the Space-Time Temple from the other side. An elder of the Sacred Eye Clan appeared behind the elder of the Space-Time Temple and attacked him together with the elder of the Radiant Temple. Oof! The elder of the Space-Time Temple was immediately defeated and was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. Battles like this occurred in many places in the Space-Time Temple. Against the combined forces of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye Clan, the Space-Time Temple was clearly at a disadvantage, whether it was their peak battle prowess or ordinary battle prowess. As soon as the battle began, people would be injured or even killed. It's our turn. St. Koro looked at the 3 figures in the sky and said to Gray and Lighter, to end this battle, the most important thing was still the battle between them. This was the key factor that could determine the outcome of this battle. Using time reversal, St. Koro turned into a middle-aged man, a stalwart middle-aged man. The Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter took out a trident with 3 sharp points at the front. Its surface was covered with fine patterns. With the appearance of the trident, the runic matrices in various places of the Space-Time Temple lit up. The trident began to emit a terrifying aura. Not all Saint-class forces had weapons of laws. The Sorcerer Temple did not have any, and neither did the Space-Time Temple. This was also the reason why St. Koro had been collecting spatial metals in various planes. A blood-red light appeared and enveloped Gray's body. Gray, who had reached the 6th level of the Destruction class, had received a huge boost in all aspects. He was now comparable to an ordinary Law class being. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The 3 of them and a Law class bird beast pounced toward the 3 people in the sky. Gray and St. Koro had teleported to the side of the target, while the Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter and the Law class bird beast did not have the ability to teleport, so they quickly charged toward the Radiant Temple Lord. Chapter 796. Whoosh! Gray teleported behind the Sacred Eye Clan, Saint Wei Wei. The Sword of the Sun, which was wrapped in the power of the rules of time, tore through space with an eerie silence and stabbed towards the Sacred Eye Clan, Saint Wei Wei's back. Terrifying, destructive power brewed on the sword. The power of the 6th level of the Annihilation grade, coupled with the strengthening of the rules of Curse and the Sword of the Sun, was much stronger than when he fought the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall half a year ago. However, the specialty of the power of the rules of time was that it was not obvious. Although it had terrifying power, it was extremely quiet on the outside. To a certain extent, the power of the rules of time was an ability that was extremely suitable for assassination. However, just as Gray teleported, the Sacred Eye Clan, Saint Wei Wei, seemed to have grown eyes on the back of his head. He turned around quickly and looked at Gray coldly. In between his eyebrows, a golden vertical eye had already opened, and a golden light was brewing within it. Whoosh! A golden light shot out from his golden vertical eye and collided with Gray's sword at a terrifying speed. Pop! The 2 collided and a terrifying ripple spread out. Then, Gray seemed to have suffered a violent attack. His right hand was completely numb and his body was sent flying. His clothes were tattered and many wounds appeared on his body. They were caused by the spreading ripple. Even though he had reached the 6th level of the Annihilation grade, there was still a huge difference between his battle prowess and a veteran rule level expert. Whoosh! Facing Gray, who was sent flying, another huge golden light shot out from the golden vertical eye on the forehead of the Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei Wei Wei. Along with a spatial crack, it attacked Gray. Even though Gray was retreating rapidly, his opponent's eyes could easily capture Gray, who was retreating rapidly, and launch an attack. As expected of someone who possessed the rules of eyes, regular veteran rule level experts could not achieve such terrifying dynamic vision. Whoosh! Just as he was about to be hit by the golden light, Gray's figure disappeared. Diagonally behind Gray, the originally dark clouds were pierced, and the sun's light shone through the hole. Gray's figure appeared more than 10 miles away from the Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei Wei. In half a year, Gray had advanced by 3 realms, and his reaction speed had become much faster. With this reaction speed, he managed to escape before he was hit by the golden light. However, Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye clan was extremely difficult to deal with. Almost as soon as Gray appeared in that direction, he had already turned to look at Gray. Whoosh! Another golden light tore through space, bringing along a terrifying spatial crack as it attacked Gray. Under the eyes of the other party, it was as if nothing could hide. Gray seriously suspected that the other party's eyes had a 360-degree view without any blind spots. Whoosh! 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 Gray teleported away again, but when he reappeared, another golden light attacked him. Under the other party's attack, he only had the power to dodge and did not have the power to fight back. Under such an attack, if I'm not careful, I could be seriously injured or even killed. This can't go on. Although he had continuously dodged the golden rays, Gray's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He couldn't guarantee that he would be able to dodge the golden rays every time. If he couldn't dodge them, he would be seriously injured or even killed. Buzz! He teleported again, and another golden light attacked him. This time he did not dodge. Instead, a spatial barrier appeared in front of him, blocking the golden light. He was not sure if the spatial barrier could block it, but he had to do so. He had to try to use the spatial barrier to change the current unfavorable situation. Rumble. The terrifying shock wave hit the spatial barrier, causing it to ripple violently. It was like a glass that was shaking violently, as if it would shatter in the next moment. Fortunately, the spatial barrier did not shatter until the golden light disappeared. The spatial barrier blocked the attack. It blocked it. Gray breathed a sigh of relief. If it was half a year ago, the spatial barrier would definitely not have been able to block the golden light. Fortunately, with the improvement of his realm, the spatial barrier's defense had become stronger. It could even block the attack of a veteran law-level powerhouse, as expected of someone with 3 law-level abilities. Seeing that the spatial barrier had blocked his attack, Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei Wei sneered. The murderous intent on his body was like the cold winter wind, making people feel bone-chilling. The more powerful Gray was, the more murderous intent in his heart. Now that he had such powerful strength, it would be terrible if he allowed him to become a law-level being. Whoosh! His body was shrouded in golden light. Standing still, his figure moved. Although he did not have the ability to teleport, he quickly appeared on the other side of the spatial barrier. The golden light attacked Gray. Gray hurriedly propped up a spatial barrier on this side to block the golden light. However, he appeared on the other side without a spatial barrier and attacked Gray again. Rumble, rumble, rumble. After a series of explosions, Wei Wei, the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, flew around Gray. Space barriers appeared all around Gray. Forced to defend himself, Gray could not help but lock himself in the space cage. One could imagine how much pressure he was under the attack of Wei Wei in from the Sacred Eye clan. While Gray and Wei Wei were fighting, Saint Koluo and Saint Samuel, as well as the Temporal Temple's Lighter and the Radiant Temple's Temple Master Alex, were also fighting. Samuel, I will kill you today, even if I have to risk my life. Saint Koluo's killing intent was cold, and a pitch-black vortex appeared beside him. It was like a black hole, and it carried a terrifying suction force as it smashed towards Saint Samuel. A few people from the Radiant Saint Hall, who could not dodge in time, were directly sucked in. Nothing remained of them. The pitch-black vortex, or more accurately, it should be called a space-time vortex. This was a law ability formed from a mixture of the laws of time and space. It represented a warped point in space-time, a point that should not exist. It possessed a terrifying suction force, and any person or object sucked in would have their existence erased. That's right, erased from this space-time. They would completely disappear, and not even their bones would be left behind. You can't do it. Saint Samuel knew how terrifying the space-time vortex was, and he knew how terrifying Saint Kuluo, who had recovered his middle-aged appearance, was. However, he was not afraid. Since he dared to attack the space-time temple, he was naturally prepared to encounter Saint Kuluo. A platinum sword appeared in his hand. There was a picture of a woman with 2 wings on her back on the sword. This was the Sword of Light. He had taken this sword from Alex of the Radiant Saint Hall. With the amplification of the Sword of Light, a huge black and white sword appeared in front of him and collided with the space-time vortex. Rumble. The space-time vortex was powerful. It could erase space-time, but the black and white sword was not weak either. It was a mixture of the laws of light and the laws of darkness, and it was amplified by a law weapon. When the two collided, a terrifying shockwave spread out. The people from the 3 factions who were fighting could not help but vomit blood and fly backwards under the shockwave. Some of the disciples who were too weak were directly turned into minced meat. Swish! The trident in Lighter's hand shone with silver light. Afterwards, a spatial blade invisible to ordinary people slashed towards Alex. As an expert of the laws of light, Alex was naturally no ordinary person. He could clearly see the spatial blade that others could not see. A spear condensed from platinum light appeared in his hand, stabbing towards the spatial blade. Crack! With a crisp sound, the spatial blade shattered, but the platinum spear only dimmed a little. Although the power from the inscriptions of the space-time temple was great, even greater than the power from the inscriptions of the Shaman Saint Hall, it was still a sliver away from reaching the level of the laws of light. Spurt! At this moment, the bird beast, which was covered in purple scales, grabbed at the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex. Alex snorted coldly, and the dim platinum-colored spear in his hand stabbed at the bird beast. A huge hole appeared on the bird beast's body, and it was sent flying. Fortunately, the bird beast was huge. As a corpse controller, it only had its head as its weakness, so it did not affect its battle prowess too much. At the same time, it already possessed the ability to heal, so its wounds healed rapidly. Humph. Do you really think I can't do anything to you, Dash? The saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei, stood outside the space cage with a cold look in his eyes. He stared at Gray like an eagle, as if he could see through Gray. Swish! 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 Several streaks of golden light shot out from the golden eye, colliding with the spatial barrier. Before the first attack had even dispersed, the second attack had already arrived. The violent impact stacked together, unleashing a destructive force that far exceeded a single streak of golden light. Crack! Cracks appeared on the tough spatial barrier, as if it could shatter at any time. However, Wei Wei's attacks continued. Oh no! A sense of extreme danger rose in his heart. Gray's expression changed, and he vanished from the spatial cage with a teleport. Just as he vanished from the spatial cage, the cracked spatial barrier suddenly exploded. Violent golden light wreaked havoc in the spatial cage. If Gray had been a moment slower, he might have been torn to shreds by the violent golden light. Swish! As soon as Gray appeared, Wei had already locked onto Gray with a streak of golden light and attacked Gray. Gray dodged, but as soon as he dodged, another streak of golden light attacked him. Just like before, he could only dodge under the attacks of Wei. It was like walking on a tightrope, and he could be injured and killed at any time. The situation was extremely unfavorable for him and the space-time temple. It was not that he had not thought of escaping with Sophia through teleportation. Ignoring the fact that he and Sophia had received great kindness from the space-time temple, There was nowhere for them to escape, even if they teleported. Under the rules of the Eyes of the Sacred Eye Clan, they would be found no matter where they hid. As long as the Sacred Eye Clan was around, they would have nowhere to hide. Chapter 797. Let's see how long you can last. Streaks of golden light shot towards Gray as Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye Clan sneered. Under his rules of sight, his opponent's whereabouts would be exposed. It was impossible for his opponent to maintain such a high frequency of teleportation. When his opponent was exhausted, it would be the time for him to die. I can't just sit here and wait for my death. Gray naturally understood this point and tried hard to think of a way to reverse the current unfavorable situation. Suddenly, there was a look of determination in his eyes. Whoosh! He teleported again, but this time, he appeared a few meters behind Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye Clan. The Sun Sword, which was shrouded in time precepts, quickly pierced towards Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye Clan. Futile struggle. Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye Clan instantly turned to face Gray and sneered disdainfully. A streak of golden light shot out from between his eyebrows and blocked Gray's sword. Pop! The rules of time wrapped around the sword was defeated by the golden light, and the terrifying aftermath of the golden light swept towards Gray. Deep bloodstains appeared on Gray's right hand that was holding the sword. Not only did Gray's right hand hold the sword, but he also had many wounds all over his body, and he was involuntarily sent flying. Whoosh! A streak of golden light shot towards Gray as he was sent flying. A huge crack appeared in the space and followed the golden light all the way forward, like a crack in the abyss that was choosing to devour people. The crisis of life and death descended on Gray. Under such circumstances, Gray could only teleport to avoid it or use the space barrier to block it. Other than that, he had no other choice. But at this moment, Gray made the third choice. Pop! Spatial fluctuations that were invisible to the average person suddenly appeared and spread in the direction of the golden light, which was also the direction where the Sacred Eye Clan, Saint Wei Wei was. Whoosh! A strange scene appeared. The golden light disappeared mysteriously just as it was about to hit Gray. In an instant, it appeared behind Gray and shot behind Gray. Crackle! Under this golden light, a large number of palaces in the space-time temple were shattered. These were all buildings that had been strengthened by the runic array, but under the golden light, they were like paper. What? Seeing such an outcome, Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye Clan was stunned and instinctively dodged the spreading space waves. However, the spatial fluctuations spread out very quickly, and he didn't dodge back immediately. By the time he dodged back, the spatial fluctuations had already swept past him. Whoosh! After being swept by the spatial ripples, there were no injuries on his body, but a strange feeling appeared. He couldn't tell what was strange, but his instincts told him that something must have happened. Due to the strange change in direction of his attack, just now, he did not attack Gray. Instead, he retreated in an attempt to distance himself from Gray. After retreating a few dozen meters, a strange feeling flashed through his mind. Then, he was shocked to find that he had appeared in another place. Not only did the distance between him and Gray not increase, but it had shortened instead. This phenomenon was naturally the effect of Gray's newly acquired fourth derivative ability, the space maze. Saint Wei Wei had been trapped in the space maze by Gray. Phew! After stabilizing his body, Gray wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and sighed softly. It was too dangerous just now. If he had been hit by that powerful golden light, even if he didn't die, he would have been seriously injured. Fortunately, I succeeded. What made him glad was that he had taken a risk and succeeded. Since the beginning of the battle, he had been considering using the space maze to trap his opponent, and then fight him in the space maze, which was his home ground. However, after careful consideration, he came to the conclusion that under normal circumstances, it would be difficult to trap his opponent in the space maze. Half a year ago, the battle between Saint Koro and Saint Samuel was still vivid in his mind. Saint Koro had tried to trap Saint Samuel in the phantom space, but Saint Samuel had avoided it. Even Saint Koro couldn't trap a veteran saint in his home ground, let alone him. Being able to succeed this time, even he couldn't help but feel surprised because, according to his estimation, the success rate under normal circumstances was less than 30%. The main reason is that the opponent doesn't know that I have the space maze ability, otherwise he wouldn't have given me this opportunity. The reason why he was able to succeed was because he had to pay the price of putting himself in danger. But the more important reason was that the opponent didn't know that he had the space maze ability. He was caught off guard and didn't immediately notice that something was wrong. Whoosh! Suddenly appearing in another direction, Saint Wei Wei's expression changed, and he had a bad feeling. He retreated again and was ready to try to distance himself from Gray again. But the next moment his heart sank. His position changed again, and he appeared in a place that was neither too far nor too close to Gray. With a sullen face, he chose a new direction and retreated again. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. He moved continuously, but every time he was teleported to a place that was neither too far nor too close to Gray. Teleportation? No, it's not just teleportation. After a few times, knowing that it was difficult to escape, he stopped with a sullen face and made a decision. Since he couldn't get out, he would kill the user of the ability. Once the user of the ability died, the ability would naturally disappear. Whoosh! From the golden vertical eye between his brows, a golden ray of light attacked Gray. The golden ray of light spread with a terrifying power that could tear the space apart. But just as it was about to hit Gray, it suddenly disappeared and suddenly appeared not far in front of him and changed direction to attack him. And Gray, who was supposed to be the target of the attack, was indeed unscathed. Pop! The golden vertical eye's golden ray of light collided with the ray of light and blocked it narrowly, but was affected by the shock wave, and its clothes became tattered. What ability is this? The Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei Wei's face was so gloomy that water could drip out of it. He knew that he would be teleported if he acted rashly or moved rashly. Hence, he did not act rashly. Instead, he stood where he was and asked Gray in a deep voice. Space Maze. The solemn expression on Gray's face relaxed slightly. Maze? Good move. Saint Wei snorted coldly. It was like a maze that one could never get out of. It was indeed worthy of its name. The thoughts in his mind spun quickly, and he gradually calmed down. Then, he let out a disdainful sneer. However, if I'm not wrong, the space maze is just a trap-like ability. As long as I stand where I am, you can't do anything to me. That's right, the space maze is indeed a trap-like ability. Gray nodded in agreement. The other party was indeed worthy of being a veteran expert of the rules. After the initial panic, he gradually calmed down and discovered the drawbacks of the space maze. Then let me see what means you have to kill me. You don't have much time left. Saint Wei sneered and glanced at the battle between the Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter, the Rule Level Bird Beast, and the Light Temple Lord Alex. The Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter and the Rule Level Bird Beast were completely at a disadvantage. The Rule Level Bird Beast was covered in injuries, and its head was covered in wounds. If it were not for its self-healing ability, it would have been destroyed long ago. The Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter was also injured. Against a Rule-Level expert, even if the two of them worked together, they were no match. Only Gray could contend against a Rule-Level expert without being at the Rule level. No one else could do such a miracle. This is troublesome. Gray also saw this, and his heart sank. If the Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter and the Rule-Level Bird Beast were defeated, the Light Temple would have a Rule-Level expert free up. Whether it was Saint Kaluo or the people of the Space-Time Temple, the consequences would be disastrous. Swish! With the enhancement of the Sun Sword, a purple time law power was slashed by Gray to the right, where there was no one. However, in the next moment, the purple time rule power disappeared and suddenly appeared behind Saint Wei from the Sacred Eye clan, attacking him directly. Saint Wei seemed to have eyes on the back of his head. He suddenly turned around, and his right hand was covered in golden light. His right hand was like a chopper, tearing the purple time law power apart. He did not stop there after tearing the time law power apart. Instead, he quickly rushed to the place where the time law power appeared behind him. Although he kept saying that he wanted to wait at ease, he could not afford to be trapped like this and wait for others to defeat their opponents and rescue him. Whoosh! Through the teleportation point, he appeared not far from Gray. A golden light with a destructive aura attacked Gray from between his eyebrows. The golden light was about to tear Gray to shreds, but in the next moment, a strange scene occurred. The golden light suddenly disappeared, and then changed direction and attacked him directly. Puffed. Faced with such a close attack, he had no time to block it. He was directly knocked down by his own attack and flew backward while spitting out blood. What's going on? He was actually injured by his own attack. His face was ashen and extremely ugly. Your understanding of the space maze seems to be a little off. Gray smirked as he looked at the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei In. He was naturally wary of the situation just now. Although the maze ability was a trap-like ability, it did not mean that he could not control the teleportation points in the space maze. As the user of the ability, he could change the direction of the teleportation points. He could also add or remove teleportation points according to his will. Therefore, it was destined to be futile for his opponent to find a route to approach and attack him through the direction of his attack. Good, very good. Then let me see if you kill me first, or if the Light Temple Lord Alex kills the Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter first. Wei In of the Sacred Eye clan had an ugly look on his face as he stared coldly at Gray and said in a low voice. Chapter 798. Whoosh! Gray was highly focused as he slashed out with his sword. After a few twists of the Time Rule power, he suddenly appeared on the left side of the Sacred Eye clan saint and attacked him. Although he had trapped the Sacred Eye clan saint, the overall situation was still disadvantageous to the Space-Time Temple. It would be best if he could kill the Sacred Eye clan saint before the Space-Time Temple Lord Lighter was killed. Otherwise, the situation would be one-sided. However, this was a very difficult task. You want to kill me with such a weak attack. Just as the power of Time Rule was about to hit Wei In, the Sacred Eye clan saint laughed coldly. He swung his left hand and shot out a beam of golden light that blocked the power of Time Rule. Violent aftershocks spread and cracks appeared in the space. Even a gold weapon would be shattered. Unfortunately, the aftershocks could not hurt him at all. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Seeing that his opponent had easily blocked the Time Rule power, Gray's expression became more serious as he waved the Sun Sword in his hand. Streaks of Time Rule power attacked the Sacred Eye clan saint, Wei, from different directions. Now, this is interesting, but it's still not enough. The Sacred Eye clan saint, Wei, still had a look of contempt on his face. Faced with the attacks coming from all directions, he stood still and waved his hands in all directions. Streaks of golden light shot out from his hands and instantly defeated the streaks of Time Rule power. The surrounding area was filled with spatial rifts. One could imagine how powerful the collisions were, but it was still difficult to injure him at all. With the combat strength of a veteran rule-level expert and his 360-degree perception that had no blind spots, no attack could hurt him. If that's all you have, you can wait to see the Space-Time Temple Lord killed. Turning to look at Gray, the Sacred Eye clan saint, Wei, had a mocking look on his face. Against a veteran rule power expert, your attack power is still too weak. Gray did not say a word. Although his opponent's words were full of mockery, it was a fact. If he could not come up with a more effective method, he would not be able to kill his opponent. He had to change. Whoosh! He teleported and appeared a few hundred meters away from Wei from the Sacred Eye clan. Instead of attacking him, he began to construct layers and layers of space barriers in the air. In the center of these space barriers was the Sacred Eye clan saint, Wei In. You want to lock me in a spatial cage? The moment Gray created the space shield, Saint Wei of the Sacred Eye clan had already sensed Gray's intentions. His expression changed slightly and a golden ray of light appeared from the golden vertical eye between his eyebrows. It carried a terrifying aura and attacked the space shield along with a huge space crack. However, just as the golden light was about to hit the spatial barrier, it suddenly disappeared. When it reappeared, it had changed direction and attacked him instead. Since the other party had the combat power to destroy the spatial barrier, how could Gray not be on guard? He had long since set up several teleportation nodes around the spatial barrier. When the other party's attack passed through these teleportation nodes, it would immediately counterattack. Pop! Another golden ray of light shot out from the golden vertical eye between his eyebrows and blocked the golden light that had turned back. However, as the distance was too close, he was hit by the aftershock and was continuously pushed back. Streaks of blood appeared on his body. The Sacred Eye Clan Saint, Wei Un's expression darkened. He no longer stood where he was and quickly moved. He wanted to escape the range of the space shield, but unfortunately, he was sent back again before he could escape far. At this moment, the space shield that was a few hundred meters in length, width, and height finally formed. Under Gray's control, the space quickly shrank and trapped Wei in. I've been trapped. Looking at the rapidly shrinking space, the Sacred Eye Clan Saint, Wei Un's expression turned completely grave. He had some understanding of the space shield, which was a relatively common ability derived from the rules of space. It was rumored that those who were completely trapped in the space shield would be unable to move. However, this was not the most terrifying thing. The most terrifying thing was that although the space shield did not attack, when its size was infinitely reduced, it would possess a powerful compression force. Even with his current physical strength, he would most likely be crushed by this powerful compression force. Humph! As an experienced rule-level elite, he was forced into such a state by an annihilation grade. This made him furious. With a cold snort, he seemed to be in great pain. Suddenly, golden vertical eyes that were slightly smaller than the golden vertical eye between his eyebrows appeared on his body. As soon as they appeared, they shot out beams of golden light in all directions. Most of these golden lights were sent back through the teleportation point and hit his body. However, the power of these golden lights was intentionally controlled by him to be extremely weak. When they hit his body, they only made him stagger slightly. There was also a portion that did not teleport back. Instead, they hit the space shield, and there were banging sounds on the space shield. Found it. Under the rules of Eye, he could clearly see the direction of the golden lights that hit the space shield. He sneered and turned his head to look in one direction. The golden vertical eye between his eyebrows shot out golden light. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Rays of golden light shot out from the vertical eye between his eyebrows and shot in this direction. They were not teleported away by the teleportation point, but hit the space shield directly. Bang, bang, bang. The turbulent golden lights stacked together and exploded with a terrifying impact. Many cracks appeared on the space shield. Finally, there was a cracking sound as it shattered. The space shield was broken. The terrifying shockwave spread out in that area, but he still rushed toward that area. Not good. Seeing his opponent like this, Gray's expression changed. He quickly created another space shield to seal that side again. However, it was too late. His opponent rushed out of the space cage from that direction with blood all over his body. I almost died in your hands. Good move, really good move. Looking at himself covered in blood, Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei smiled. His smile was extremely creepy, especially with the golden vertical eyes all over his body. It was extremely creepy. However, I already know the weakness of the space maze. Next will be your death. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Rays of golden light shot out from the golden vertical eyes all over his body. Some were teleported, while others passed through without any resistance. Whoosh! In the next moment, he followed the direction of one of the rays of golden light and rushed toward Gray. He did not pass through any teleportation points and quickly approached Gray. He really found the weakness of the space maze. Looking at the rapidly approaching Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei, Gray's expression turned solemn. His opponent had indeed found the weakness of the space maze. Although he could change or increase the teleportation points of the space maze, he could not fill every place in the space maze with teleportation points. With his current ability, the number of teleportation points that he could create was limited. It was impossible to cover every space, and this was the weakness of the space maze. He could not let his opponent get close to him. Otherwise, he would be in extreme danger. Buzz, the space maze's ability was activated. The positions of all the teleportation points and teleportation directions changed. Finally, Before Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei In could get close, he was teleported far away. It seems that the teleportation points are not fixed. The positions can also be changed. He was about to approach Gray when he was suddenly teleported far away. Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei stood where he was and narrowed his eyes. He immediately understood the reason. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Once again, rays of golden light shot out from his body. He followed the path of the golden light that had not been teleported and once again approached Gray. Gray once again changed the location of the teleportation point and once again teleported the approaching opponent away. The two of them were in a stalemate. Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei In tried to find opportunities to get close to Gray again and again, but Gray changed the teleportation point again and again to stop him. Just stopping him took up a lot of Gray's energy. Gray no longer had the energy to attack him. Bang! With a great rumble, the entire space-time temple shook. Under Alex's attack, the bird beast of laws slammed into a building in the space-time temple heavily, causing the entire building to collapse. This was not the first time such a scene had happened, but Gray's expression changed slightly. His connection with the bird beast had been severed, which meant that the bird beast's ability to control the corpse had been destroyed. Without the assistance of the bird beast's ability to control the corpse, it was even more impossible for the space-time temple Lord Lighter to be Alex's opponent. The situation became more and more urgent. My Sacred Eye Clan and the Light Temple have won. Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei In was smug when he saw that the bird beast had lost its reaction. The situation is not good. Gray's expression was solemn, and he could not help but look in the direction of the battle between Saint Koluo and Saint Samuel. There was no need to think about it on his side. Being able to trap the veteran Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei In was almost his limit. Now he could only see if Saint Koluo could end the battle as soon as possible and reverse the situation. But after seeing it, his mood became even more heavy. There's an advantage, but it's not too big. Although Saint Koluo had the advantage and used the Black Vortex to force Saint Samuel into a mess again and again, it was extremely difficult to kill Saint Samuel. The situation was at most slightly better than his side, but it was impossible to end the battle before the space-time Temple Lord Lighter was killed. The Black Vortex should be a mixture of the law of time and the law of space, right? Looking at the Black Vortex, Gray's gaze was suddenly attracted, and he was deeply intoxicated by the Black Vortex, erasing things from space and time. Is this Saint Koluo's space-time ability? Unknowingly, a pitch-black ball appeared in front of him. It was as black as ink and did not reflect light at all. It was like an extremely black dot. Chapter 799. Chance. Seeing that Gray's attention was attracted by the battle between Saint Koro and Saint Samuel, the Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Rays of golden light shot out, and after finding a suitable route, he pounced on Gray. In an instant, he was already close to Gray. From the golden vertical eye between his eyebrows, a destructive golden light shot out. It tore through space, and with the power to destroy heaven and earth, it attacked Gray. Die! Poof! The destructive golden light drowned Gray, and the terrifying golden light spilled out from where Gray was. In the void, spatial cracks appeared like broken glass, and Gray was in the center of the broken glass. The violent shock wave spread, and the Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei was forced to retreat by the powerful shock wave. Although he was in a sorry state, his face showed a smug look. He's dead for sure. Under the eye of the natural order, he clearly saw that Gray and Fergus were swallowed by the golden light, and they did not have time to teleport away. Although Gray Fergus had the fighting power of a natural order, and because he had mastered 3 types of natural order abilities, he had mastered many techniques and could be said to be extremely difficult to deal with. However, his opponent was in the annihilation grade, and under the full attack of a veteran natural order contender, he was very sure that his opponent would die for sure. What is this? The shock wave dissipated, and Gray's position became clear. Suddenly, his face showed a puzzled expression. Under the eye of the natural order, he clearly saw that between the spatial cracks, there was a black sphere close to 2 meters in size. The black sphere was pitch black, almost the same color as the spatial cracks. If one did not pay attention, one would think that it was a spatial hole, but his eye of a natural order clearly noticed the difference between the black sphere and the spatial cracks. The spatial cracks were holes, while the black sphere gave him a feeling of substance, like some kind of substance. However, he had never seen such a substance, and had not even seen any description of it in any books. It was like a substance that did not belong to this world. Could it have fallen out of the void zone? A guess arose in his heart. Even though he was a nomological contender, he knew very little about the void zone. If this substance had fallen out of the void zone, it was very likely. It was obvious that this material wasn't simple. Perhaps it could be used as a material for a weapon of loss. He wanted to take a closer look, but a sudden change startled him and forced him to stop in his tracks. The black ball suddenly trembled. Then, like a fruit, it was peeled off. After peeling off the skin, a figure covered in blood appeared before him. You actually didn't die? Seeing this figure, his face became bewildered. The figure that appeared was none other than Gray, who he thought was dead. Although there were many wounds on his body and his clothes were dyed red with blood, it was obvious that he was still alive. Moreover, with the inside of his rule of eye, he could clearly see that the wounds on the other party's body were rapidly healing. The other party actually had self-healing abilities. "I'm sorry to disappoint you." Gray grinned, revealing his white teeth. Being distracted in the middle of a battle was a low-level mistake that should not have happened to him, but it did. It was because his gaze was involuntarily attracted by the space-time vortex, which produced a strong resonance. When he came back to his senses, a black ball about the size of an adult's fist appeared in front of him. The annihilation-grade golden light was already very close to it. Whether it was teleportation, blocking it with a spatial barrier, or using the maze ability to create a spatial teleportation point, it was too late. He was already drowned in the golden light. Instinctively, he developed the idea of defense. Then, a strange scene appeared. The black ball, which was only the size of a fist, suddenly spread out and turned into a thin, hollow ball, protecting him within. It was only a thin layer, but it was unimaginably sturdy. When the surging golden light hit it, it was like a tide hitting a reef. It was not damaged at all. He had relied on a thin, hollow ball to survive the attack of a veteran nomological contender. It had to be said that this was a miracle that even he himself was surprised by. "What is this thing?" Sacred Eye Clan Saint Weiwei's face was full of shock and uncertainty. However, although he was shocked, his strong nerves still allowed him to break free from his emotions and quickly attacked Gray again. From the golden vertical, eye between his brows, a destructive golden light attacked again. The surging golden light was like the light of the end of the world, bringing with it a destructive aura that swept towards Gray. Whoosh! Facing the golden light that came straight at him again, Gray almost instinctively, as if he was controlling his own hands and feet, controlled the black ball to meet the golden light. Poof! The black ball, which was only the size of a fist, collided with the surging golden light. Then, whether it was Sacred Eye Clan, Saint Weiwei, or Gray, they were all shocked by the scene that unfolded. Under the impact of the black ball, the surging golden light dissipated like fireworks, and the black ball went up against the golden light. After the golden light was completely destroyed, it lost its momentum and automatically returned to Gray's side. "No, that's impossible." Weiwei and of the Sacred Eye Clan widened his eyes as shock and astonishment appeared on his face. Gray Fergus was actually able to block his all-out attack with the help of this small black ball. Didn't this mean that Gray Fergus's direct combat power was not inferior to his? This was a result that made him stunned, shocked, and shocked. A person who had not yet reached the nomological contender's combat strength was comparable to a veteran nomological contender. Could he have been hit by some kind of hallucinatory ability? But what kind of hallucinatory ability could make him, a veteran nomological contender, fall for it? He blocked it. Gray was equally shocked. Although he controlled the black ball to collide with the golden light, he did not think that the black ball could block the golden light. He was already prepared to teleport away. He did not expect such a dramatic scene to occur. The black ball actually blocked the full force attack of a veteran nomological contender. This black ball should be some kind of substance, but it's completely different from ordinary substances. I was inspired to create this substance by watching the space-time vortex. If it's really triggered by space-time ability, I'm afraid this is a substance that transcends space-time and should not exist in this space-time. Looking at the black ball floating in front of him again, Gray was full of shock. St. Kuluo's space-time ability is to erase existence and make it disappear from the space-time. My space-time ability is to obtain substances that do not belong to this space-time. Our space-time abilities are completely opposite. Obtaining such space-time ability is completely out of my expectations, but at least I have the last piece of the puzzle to kill the Sacred Eye Clan Saint. Gray's eyes were surging with murderous intent. He had used all sorts of methods, but was still unable to kill Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye Clan. He knew the reason very well. He lacked a weapon that was powerful enough to kill Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye Clan. Now that he had such a weapon, he had the final piece of the puzzle. Buzz, using the space maze ability, the positions of all the teleportation points changed. Although Gray and Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei were still very close to each other, there were layers of teleportation points between them. Gray was already in an extremely safe place. Swoosh! He controlled the black ball to enter one of the teleportation points. Then, he saw the small figure of the black ball shuttling through the void, appearing and disappearing at times. Finally, he appeared in front of the Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei, appearing only a few meters away from him. Monster, what a monster! Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei broke out in cold sweat as he looked at the black ball that appeared and disappeared at times. Regardless of what the black ball was, the power of the black ball was enough to pose a threat to him. At this moment, he really regretted that the Sacred Eye Clan had provoked Gray Fergus. He was a monster that could not be measured by common sense. Whoosh! Under the rule of eyes, the moment the black sphere appeared beside him, he had already sensed it. He turned around, and a golden light shot out from between his eyebrows. Before the black sphere could hit him, he narrowly blocked the black sphere. Rumble! A terrifying power was released from the collision. He was too close to him, and his entire body was sent flying by the shockwave. There were wounds that looked like they were made by blades on his body. Relying on his terrifying state, he forcibly stabilized his body in the void. At this moment, the black ball attacked him again under Gray's control. Rumble! It was another close-range interception. The terrifying shockwave caused him to be sent flying again with injuries. Before he could stabilize his body, the black ball attacked him again under Gray's control. Poof! There was no time to block it. The black ball hit his right wrist, and with a spurt of blood, his right wrist exploded. Blood and bone fragments splattered everywhere. Hiss! The heart-wrenching pain caused him to break out in cold sweat. Blood and sweat mixed together. However, the black sphere that had done all of this didn't stop at all. It quickly turned back and attacked him again under Gray's control. Bang! Enduring the intense pain, the golden light between his eyebrows blocked the black ball again. However, there were more wounds on his body, and he was sent flying by the shockwave. Poof! The black ball turned back and attacked again. This time, it hit his chest directly and pierced through it. Blood and flesh splattered everywhere along with bone fragments. A huge hole had appeared in his chest. Large amounts of blood were gushing out from both sides like an unstoppable valve. Chapter 800. Cough, cough. Although his heart had been pierced, the Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei did not die immediately. His powerful life force at the nomological level prevented him from dying immediately after his heart had been pierced. He hurriedly took out a precious crystal bottle containing a light green potion from a space item, pulled out the cork, and poured it into his mouth. The green liquid was poured into his mouth. Then, at the location of his heart, the heart that had been turned into meat paste actually grew out rapidly and started beating again. At the same time, the wounds all over his body healed almost instantly. Even his severed right arm was rapidly growing forward. It was actually being reconstructed. Life potion, Gray exclaimed when he saw the dying saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei, break free from the border of death. With his eyesight, he could clearly see the words life potion engraved on the surface of the potion bottle in his opponent's hand. This was a level 6 super healing potion. Back then, he had seen a similar potion in the underwater ruins. However, he did not choose it in the end. Instead, he chose the golden light potion, which was more suitable for him. As an alchemist, he had seen descriptions of life potions in relevant books. However, he had always felt that they were a little exaggerated. After all, it was impossible for a broken heart to be instantly repaired. But now, he no longer felt that the description of the life potion was an exaggeration. A person with a shattered heart had actually had his heart repaired in an instant right in front of him. Even his severed arm was being repaired. If you want to live, have you asked for my permission? Gray's face was full of murderous intent. A black ball the size of a fist shot out in front of him. After one round of teleportation, it appeared beside the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei. It went straight for Wei Wei's heart that had already been repaired. Even the surrounding flesh and bones were about to be completely repaired. No, the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei, screamed in despair and tried to escape. Unfortunately, he was severely injured and had lost a lot of blood, so his movements were not as agile as before. Puff! The black ball pierced through the man's heart again, and another hole appeared in his chest. The repaired flesh, bones, and heart were destroyed again. However, the life potion was indeed worthy of being a grade 6 potion. Its effects were still in effect. His destroyed heart grew once more, and he once again struggled out from the brink of death. Oomph! Gray snorted, and the black ball returned with terrifying power, attacking the Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei Wei's back. Poof! It pierced through Wei Wei's heart from the back and came out from his chest. Once again, Wei Wei's heart was pierced. This time, the heart did not immediately recover. Although the life potion was still working hard to repair the broken heart, the effects were clearly not as strong as before. It was difficult to repair the heart, but it was only comparable to the healing power. At this rate, it was obviously impossible to repair the heart before the Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei died. I regret not. The Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei's eyes were filled with unwillingness and regret. He knew that he wouldn't be able to survive. There wasn't even the slightest chance of survival. If he had the opportunity to do it all over again, he would never have allowed the Sacred Eye clan to become entangled with the Radiant Saint Hall. This was a path of no return, a path that led to destruction and death. His opponent was a monster that could not be measured by common sense. From the moment he stood on the opposite side, he was already destined to lose. His body no longer floated in the air and crashed heavily onto the ground. He crashed into the ruins of the Space-Time Temple, kicking up dust into the air. Beside the pile of ruins, there were two people. One of them was Lighter, the Space-Time Temple Lord who was lying on the ground, covered in blood. The other person was Alex, the Temple Lord of the Radiant Saint Hall who was holding a spear condensed from platinum light, ready to deal the final blow to Lighter. Impossible. Looking at the corpse of the Sacred Eye clan, Saint Wei, Alex, the Temple Lord of the Radiant Saint Hall, was in a daze. He even forgot to stab the light spear in his hand. After destroying the bird beast, he had a greater advantage in the battle with Lighter, the Temple Lord of the Space-Time Temple. From time to time, he would be able to injure Lighter. Finally, the Temple Lord of the Space-Time Temple was heavily injured and on the verge of death. Just as he condensed the light spear and was about to stab Lighter to death, he actually saw a corpse fall to the ground. He only glanced over hurriedly and did not pay too much attention to it. Up until now, he had already seen many corpses fall to the ground. Most of them were from the Space-Time Temple, but there were also corpses from the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. However, this hurried glance stunned him. The corpse that had fallen to the ground was none other than the veteran rule-level powerhouse, the Sacred Eye clan Sage Wei. The unprecedented impact made him unable to react for a moment. He actually forgot to stab the Temporal Temple Lord Lighter with his spear and end his life. Sir Wei. No, this is impossible. This can't be true. Impossible. How can one who died be Sir Wei Wei Wei? Alex was not the only one who saw the corpse fall. Many people from the Sacred Eye clan saw it as well. They had been watching the battle since Gray and Wei Wei In from the Sacred Eye clan were fighting. As a saint from the Sacred Eye clan, they naturally paid close attention to Wei Wei In. Moreover, this was an extremely decisive battle. If they could kill Gray Fergus, the crisis of the Sacred Eye clan would be resolved. This was also the fundamental reason why the Sacred Eye clan had joined forces with the Radiant Saint Hall. However, they had never thought that the veteran saint of the Sacred Eye clan would actually be defeated. He was defeated by Gray Fergus, who was not even a saint of the Sacred Eye clan. They found this result hard to believe and accept. Some of them even lost their will to fight, forgetting that they were currently in battle and had been heavily injured or even killed by their opponents. Swish! Gray appeared out of thin air beside the corpse of Saint Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye clan. With a wave of his hand, he had already put away the corpse of Saint Wei Wei. The corpse of the bird beast had been destroyed and needed to be replenished. Of course, this would be too wasteful. The best way was to revive it. Only then could it be maximized. Thud, thud, thud. Afterwards, he looked at the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex, who wielded a spear of light. It was an extremely indifferent glance, but coupled with the fact that he had killed the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Alex shivered inside. He could not help but take a few steps back. Swish! Gray naturally had nothing to say to this person who had once been defeated by him. The fist-sized pitch-black ball turned into a streak of black light, shooting toward the other party at extreme speed. This is a weapon of laws. Alex's hair stood on end as he was locked onto by the pitch-black ball. He felt a great sense of danger. Swish! He tossed out the spear of light he had used to kill Lighter, colliding with the pitch-black ball. Crack! The spear of light shattered like porcelain when it collided with the pitch-black ball. The black ball continued towards him after destroying the spear of light. Bang! He could not dodge in time and was struck by the pitch-black ball. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood as he was blown away. Who knew how many of his bones had been broken? A gaping wound appeared where the pitch-black ball had struck him as blood gushed out. Although it was not a fatal wound to his heart, it still heavily injured his body of laws. He was severely injured. Even though the pitch-black ball was no longer in its peak state, it still severely injured a rule-level powerhouse like him. Swish! The pitch-black ball returned to Gray's side by itself. Afterwards, under Gray's control, it attacked Alex again. No. Danger struck once again. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex, was covered in cold sweat. He wanted to use the teleportation bracelet, but he discovered to his horror that he had already given the teleportation bracelet to Saint Samuel along with the Radiant Sword. He couldn't block it. He couldn't dodge it. Swish! Suddenly, Saint Samuel appeared beside the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex, who was covered in cold sweat. As soon as he appeared, a black and white light collided with the black ball. Pop! There was annihilation at the point of collision. The black and white light dissipated, but the pitch-black ball was also blocked. Its power was exhausted, and it returned to Gray's side. Sensing the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall in danger, he temporarily forced Saint Koro back with his huge black and white sword. He used his teleportation bracelet to appear beside the heavily injured leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, saving him. After doing all this, he looked at Gray with a livid face. Gray Fergus. He originally thought that they would win the battle, but he never thought that such an unforeseen event would occur. The saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei In, had actually died at the hands of Gray Fergus. Retreat. The situation was already unfavorable to them. He immediately ordered the people of the Light Temple to retreat. As for the people of the Sacred Eye clan, they had already lost their will to fight when Saint Wei In was killed and retreated in panic. Furthermore, Saint Wei In of the Sacred Eye clan was already dead. He no longer had any value. He did not care whether he was dead or alive. Stay. Gray and Saint Koro naturally would not let the two of them escape. They both snorted coldly and attacked the two of them. The pitch-black space-time vortex and pitch-black ball attacked the two of them. Rumble. However, Just when Gray and St. Coro's attacks landed on St. Samuel and the leader of the Radiant St. Hall, St. Samuel and the leader of the Radiant St. Hall vanished and appeared several kilometers away. Coro, I really underestimated you, especially you, Gray Fergus. Even Wei Yin died at your hands. Several kilometers away, St. Samuel looked at Gray and St. Coro and said with a threatening voice, "However, you can't kill me who has the teleportation bracelet. I don't want both sides to be wiped out, so I advise you not to chase after me. XS52, then you can enter this site." Chapter 801. In your dreams. St. Coro roared angrily, his terrifying killing intent chilling. The Radiant Saint Temple and the Sacred Eye clan were the first to start the war. Now that the situation had become unfavorable, it was naturally impossible for him to agree to stop the war. Do you really want both sides to suffer? St. Samuel's voice carried a threat. As a veteran powerhouse of a law, and with a convenient item like the teleportation bracelet in his hand, he was confident that he could wipe out all the battle prowess of the Space-Time Temple under the law in front of St. Coro and Gray Fergus. Of course, on the other hand, the people of the Radiant Saint Temple should also be wiped out. Aren't you overestimating yourself? Gray sneered disdainfully. St. Coro had the ability to drag people into the shadow space, and he had a portable plane that could send people into the plane. As long as the shadow space enveloped the people of the Space-Time Temple, and then he would send them into the plane, the other party would be helpless. Even if they had the teleportation bracelet, they would not be able to penetrate the plane barrier and kill their way into the plane. Wiping out each other's existence under the law was just wishful thinking of the other party. Then let's see, apart from us, how many people can survive in the end. A cruel look appeared on St. Samuel's face. If he could not save the people of the Radiant Saint Temple, it seemed to be a good choice to let the people of the Space-Time Temple be buried with them. Thinking of this, killing intent appeared on his face, and his gaze swept over the remaining people of the Space-Time Temple, looking for a target. St. Coro snorted coldly. If Gray could think of it, he could naturally think of it too. The shadow space spread out, and immediately pulled the people of the Space-Time Temple into the shadow space. The shadow and the outside world were like two different spaces. No matter how St. Samuel attacked, it was difficult to hurt them. Coro, you are indeed making it impossible for me to attack them by doing this, but do you think Gray Fergus alone is a match for the two of us? St. Samuel sneered. According to what he had seen previously, the main reason why Gray Fergus was able to kill St. Wei Wei from the Sacred Eye clan was because Wei 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 was caught off guard and was dragged into a certain space domain. Otherwise, even if Gray Fergus had the pitch black ball technique, it would be difficult for him to kill the Sacred Eye clan's saint, Wei Wei. With a veteran rule-level powerhouse like him and Alex, there was no need to fear the other party. Whoosh! Gray didn't explain. He teleported into the shadow space and opened the entrance to the plane for everyone to enter quickly. A moment later, he and St. Kuluo appeared again, but the people from the Space-Time Temple were nowhere to be seen. He's gone? A plane. Gray Fergus, you actually open up a plane? St. Samuel's expression suddenly changed. Just as he was feeling strange about Gray's actions, he noticed that the people from the Temporal Temple were nowhere to be seen. As someone who had dealt with the Temporal Temple many times, he immediately understood the reason. Let's go. He immediately said to Alex, the Temple Master of the Light Temple beside him. Sir Samuel, Temple Master, save us. No, don't leave us behind. When the remaining people of the Light Temple heard that St. Samuel was about to abandon them, they immediately panicked. Some were desperate, and some were panicking for help. But Alex, the Temple Master of the Light Temple, hesitated and showed a look of reluctance on his face. These were the backbone of the Light Temple. If the two of them escaped, these people would definitely die. It's useless, they can't live anymore. St. Samuel shook his head and activated the teleportation bracelet very decisively. No matter how the cries for help sounded in his ears, his heart was as hard as iron. With a lifespan of tens of thousands of years, as long as he and Alex didn't die, the lost power of the Light Temple could be restored in a few thousand years at most. They would even be stronger than before. After all, they had two saints. Puff! At this moment, just when Saint Samuel activated the teleportation bracelet, a pitch-black dagger suddenly stabbed out from the empty void silently and stabbed towards Saint Samuel. Saint Samuel instinctively felt the danger and wanted to dodge to the side, but it was already too late. The pitch-black dagger stabbed into Saint Samuel's heart from the back. A strong corrosive power leaked in Saint Samuel's heart. With Saint Samuel's heart as the center, his flesh and blood rapidly rotted. As a veteran law-level powerhouse, Saint Samuel's body was so strong that even an annihilation-level powerhouse would find it difficult to damage it. But at this moment, such a strong body was strangely rotting. Glenn, blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, but it was pitch black and emitted a stench. Saint Samuel turned his head with difficulty and looked behind him. From the characteristics of the power, he judged who attacked him. Yes, it's me. Behind him, in the empty void, an old man in a black robe appeared. The old man was holding a pitch-black dagger in his hand. Lord Samuel. The sudden change completely caught the Light Temple's Temple Master Alex off guard. Then, he was extremely furious. He roared furiously and condensed a platinum spear of light in his hand, thrusting it towards the black-robed old man. However, the black-robed old man merely waved his left hand casually and sent him flying, causing him to vomit mouthfuls of blood. The Darkness Temple and the Space-Time Temple have joined forces? With his heart pierced, Saint Samuel was dead for sure. Black blood kept flowing out of his mouth as he glared angrily at the old man in a black robe. What? Only your Light Temple is allowed to join forces with the Sacred Eye race, but my Darkness Temple is not allowed to join forces with the Space-Time Temple? The old man in a black robe had a mocking smile on his face. The Light Temple had two saints. As the sworn enemy of the Light Temple, he felt a great sense of danger. When the Space-Time Temple invited him to join forces, he immediately agreed. When the Space-Time Temple was attacked, he, who had received the Space-Time Temple's call for help, immediately rushed over with the teleportation item given by the Space-Time Temple. After arriving, he saw a situation that surprised him. He estimated that the Space-Time Temple should be at a disadvantage in the face of the joint forces of the Light Temple and the Sacred Eye race. However, he did not expect that it was the Light Temple and the Sacred Eye race who were at a disadvantage. Even Saint Wei Wan of the Sacred Eye race had been killed, and the one who killed him was actually a young man who had not even reached the Law Realm. Since the Space-Time Temple had the upper hand, he was not in a hurry to show himself. Instead, he hid in the void with the Law of Concealment and quietly lurked towards Saint Samuel. You didn't expect it, did you? You will die in my hands in the end. The old man in a black robe sneered. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to assassinate a veteran Law Realm expert of the same level, even if one mastered the Law of Concealment suitable for assassination. However, the opponent's attention was completely attracted by Saint Koro and another young man, giving him this opportunity to succeed in the assassination. You! Saint Samuel's eyes were filled with unwillingness and hatred. He raised his hand, wanting to attack behind him. However, his heart had already been pierced through. The corrosive law of darkness was rapidly spreading through his body. His body had become completely powerless, and he couldn't even make such an attack. Don't worry, I will make the Light Temple accompany you in death. The old man in a black robe said with a complacent voice. Sir Samuel, seeing that Saint Samuel's body had completely gone limp, Alex, who had been sent flying by the old man in a black robe and spat out blood, knew that Saint Samuel was most likely dead. He cried out, gritted his teeth, and turned around to flee. Swoosh! In front of Alex, Gray's figure appeared in an instant, blocking his way. A fist-sized pitch-black ball floated in front of him, unaffected by gravity. Can you leave? Swoosh! The pitch-black ball turned into a streak of black light and attacked Alex. It was clearly not metal, but it gave Gray the feeling of manipulating metal. It was even more natural than manipulating metal. After its power was exhausted, it seemed to have some kind of attraction to him, and it actually turned back automatically. Swish! A huge spear of light shot towards the black ball. Afterwards, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex, dodged in a hurry. Unfortunately, before he could dodge, the black ball shattered the spear of light. The black ball caught up to him and shot past his heart. Spurt. With his heart pierced, his dodging figure immediately came to a halt. Just like Wei Wei, he spurted out blood and his body tottered in the air. After struggling for a while, his body fell from the sky powerlessly. Before this, he was already seriously injured. If he was not a rule-level powerhouse, just the injuries before this would have been enough to kill him. Now his heart was pierced again, and he died on the spot. Swish! With a teleport, he appeared beside Alex's body and stored it in his space item. Gray looked at the people of the Holy Temple and the Sacred Eye clan who were fleeing in fear. Since you've come, you can all stay here. A cold smile appeared on his lips. He opened the plane and let the people of the Space-Time Temple leave the plane to pursue these people. Gray did not hesitate to pursue these people. Spurt, spurt, spurt. His figure flashed continuously. Every time he flashed, someone would be killed. Whether it was the giants or the elders of the Annihilation Realm, none of them could block the attack of the Black Ball. He showed no mercy at all. Since they dared to attack, they should have been prepared to be killed. If he and the Space-Time Temple were the ones who were defeated today, the people of the Space-Time Temple would not have had a better ending than these people. Half an hour later, under the pursuit of Gray, Saint Koro, the black-robed old man, and the people of the Space-Time Temple, all the people of the Holy Temple and the Sacred Eye clan were killed. There's no Holy Maiden of Light. The Holy Maiden of Light did not come. Well, it's natural that they would not send a disciple with such great potential. Among these people, Gray did not see the Holy Maiden of Light that he had interacted with before. As an extremely talented disciple of the Holy Temple, she should have been heavily protected and not sent. Chapter 802. Let's go. We'll erase the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan today. Saint Koluo's eyes were filled with killing intent as he looked at the corpses of the people from the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. Indeed, it's time for the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan to be erased. Saint Galan's eyes were filled with killing intent as well. The Sacred Eye clan was nothing special. The Darkness Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan basically did not have any interactions, so there were no grievances between them. However, they were different from the Radiant Saint Hall. They were true enemies. No one knew why the two sides had become enemies. Over the past 100,000 years, who knew how many full-scale wars had erupted between the two sides? No one could remember just how many people had died as a result. Even quite a few annihilation experts had died. During the most severe conflict, there had even been experts of laws who had died together. The grievances between the two sides could be described as a blood feud. Basically, every generation of saints worked hard to destroy the other side. Destroying the other side was their life's mission. Now, this great wish was finally about to be fulfilled in his generation. The Radiant Saint Hall, the Sacred Eye clan, Gray snorted coldly as well. He also had an irreconcilable grievance with the Radiant Saint Hall. If he had not stopped them in the realm, it was very likely that the Radiant Saint Hall would have sacrificed his realm. All the people in the realm would have become sacrifices for the Radiant Saint Hall to recover the Sun Sword. After coming to the Origin World, the Radiant Saint Hall had tried to kill him twice, forcing him into danger each time. If it were not for the fact that his strength had exceeded the Radiant Saint Hall's expectations, he would have died long ago. The Sacred Eye clan was an accomplice of the Radiant Saint Hall. They were also the main culprits who had put him in danger. In order to draw him out, they had even worked together with the Radiant Saint Hall to destroy a peak clan he controlled, the Leopold clan. It was impossible for him to let go of an accomplice like that. The Radiant Saint Hall was a huge hall that occupied over 1,000 square kilometers. It was completely constructed from crystal. Every building inside was built by the best architects. When it was first built, it was said that only the best architects from all over the source world were able to successfully build it. Each and every one of the crystal buildings was exquisitely carved, yet they did not lose their majestic aura. Furthermore, each building was different from the other, revealing the ingenuity of a top-notch architect. Many of the buildings had pillars of light shooting up into the sky. They were filled with a holy and pure aura, which was reflected on the other buildings in the surrounding area. It made this place look like a holy region that was untainted by the mortal world. However, this was definitely not the holy realm. This place was also filled with filth. There was even a group of people who could do something as infuriating as the blood sacrifice plane. Whoosh! 3 figures appeared outside the Radiant Saint Hall. They were a young man and 2 old men. They were Gray, Saint Kaluo, and Saint Galan. The 3 of them stared at the Radiant Saint Hall coldly. Crack! When the plane opened, the members of the space-time temple that Gray had stored away in his plane rushed out. Immediately, a wave of murderous intent surged towards the Radiant Temple. People from the space-time temple? How could this be? How could someone from the Temporal Temple appear here? The expressions of the people guarding the Radiant Saint Hall changed when they saw the sudden appearance of these people. Some of the higher-ups who knew about the Radiant Saint Hall's plan to attack the space-time temple suddenly felt their hearts turn cold. The space-time temple that should have been under siege had appeared here. Didn't that mean that something had happened to the attack? The people who went to attack the Radiant Saint Hall were very likely already. Quick, activate the Radiant Barrier. Although they were flustered, they were still a saint-level organization after all. They were well-trained. The moment they discovered the people from the space-time temple, they had already activated the huge protective runic array of the Radiant Saint Hall. Immediately, a platinum hemispherical barrier appeared above the Radiant Saint Hall, protecting the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone from the space-time temple. Is there some sort of misunderstanding? An old man who should be an elder of the Radiant Saint Hall flew into the air. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as he smiled apologetically. Misunderstanding? You should know very well whether it's a misunderstanding or not. The vice leader of the space-time temple snorted coldly and sneered. The leader of the space-time temple, Lighter, had not come because he was too heavily injured. As a result, he was the leader of the people from the space-time temple this time. As for Saint Kaluo and His Excellency Gray, they were lofty existences. Naturally, they would disdain talking to someone as insignificant as the other party, so he had become the leader in a sense. Unknowingly, he had already developed reverence for Gray. He had already placed Gray on the level of a saint. After seeing him kill Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye Clan and Alex of the Radiant Saint Hall, it was impossible for him to treat him as an annihilation grade being. Although he was not a saint, he had the strength to kill saints. In particular, Saint Weiwei of the Sacred Eye Clan was a veteran saint. How was someone like that different from a true saint? Right now, he felt rather fortunate. When he recruited Lin Fan, he did not use the space-time temple's influence to oppress him. Afterwards, he even established a good relationship with Lin Fan. Otherwise, he would have already made a great enemy for the space-time temple. I'll tell you the truth. The people from the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye Clan who attacked the space-time temple, including the 3 saints, have all been killed. The Radiant Saint Hall is done for. If you know what's good for you, remove the barrier and surrender. Otherwise, you'll end up like the Radiant Saint Hall. The vice leader of the space-time temple, Philip, said coldly. Attacked the space-time temple? The leader and the others left silently to attack the space-time temple. The people who attacked the space-time temple were all killed. Even the 3 saints couldn't escape? No, that's impossible. You're lying to us. You must be lying to us. The Radiant Saint Hall was thrown into an uproar when they heard that. Many people were filled with panic and disbelief, but most of them believed it inside. If it were not for the fact that all the people who went to attack the space-time temple had been killed, including the 3 saints, why would the space-time temple dare to attack the Radiant Saint Hall directly? There's no need to waste words with them. Just destroy it directly. Saint Kaluo ordered with a cold expression. Yes, Sir Kaluo. With the order, the people of the space-time temple immediately took action. They all used their most powerful abilities to attack the barrier. Dazzling fireworks immediately erupted from the barrier. Rumble. Saint Kaluo struck out as well. A pitch-black space-time vortex collided with the barrier like a black hole, immediately causing the barrier to tremble violently. Gray and the Darkness Temple's Saint Galen also made their moves. St. Galan sent out a black streak of light that seemed like night had suddenly descended. It collided with the barrier, causing it to shake violently once again. As for Gray, a small black ball the size of a fist appeared in front of him, whistling as it slammed into the light barrier. Rumble. It was clearly only the size of a fist, but the damage it caused was no weaker than St. Kaluo and St. Galan's attacks. The barrier shook violently, and cracks could even be seen on the surface. Crack! Without too many surprises, the barrier shattered under the continuous attacks with St. Kaluo and St. Galan, as well as Gray, who was comparable to veteran saints even though he had yet to reach the level of loss. The people of the Space-Time Temple directly entered. The slaughter began once again. Miserable cries rose and fell within the Radiant Saint Hall. This was the end of the Radiant Saint Hall. Gray did not take part in the slaughter. He only hovered in the air as he watched on silently. St. Kaluo and St. Galan were the same as him. St. Samuel and the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall were already dead. Most of the major figures had died as well. The remaining people posed no threat to the Space-Time Temple, so there was no need for them to take action. There would naturally be people who would find the treasury of the Radiant Saint Hall for them. They would naturally be able to obtain the most generous portion. This was the confidence that came from their great strength. The remaining major figures and the Radiant Saint left recently. The Saintess and the other leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall were nowhere to be seen among the people of the Radiant Saint Hall. Not long ago, they had left the Radiant Saint Hall in a hurry. Did they receive the news? Gray raised an eyebrow. He naturally did not believe this to be a coincidence. It was very likely that they had received the news and fled in advance. Although the people of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan had all been killed, they could not prevent the news from leaking out. After all, there were many people who had witnessed the battle. It was difficult to guarantee that there would not be spies from the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. Moreover, the Sacred Eye clan possessed the laws of the Eye. Even if they were extremely far away, they could still observe the battle in the Space-Time Temple. It was possible that they had passed the news to the Radiant Saint Hall through the magic script machine when they saw the defeat of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. The most precious parts of the treasury have probably been taken away. Gray had already predicted the situation in the treasury after learning about this. As expected, when he found the treasury and saw the treasures within, his guess was confirmed. The most precious parts of the treasury, such as the most precious magic herbs, magic potions, and even some precious minerals, had all been taken away. Let's go to the Sacred Eye clan immediately. Without stopping, St. Kaluo used teleportation to take Gray and the others to the Sacred Eye clan. In the end, it was similar to the Radiant Saint Hall. The core group of people had left not long ago, and a portion of the most precious treasures had disappeared with them. The Space-Time Temple and the Darkness Temple immediately issued a warrant for the people of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. Gray entered the realm and tossed out the corpse of Saint Weiwei with a wave of his hand. If the corpse was left there for too long, the soul would disperse. By then, it would be difficult to revive it. It had already been some time since Saint Weiwei had been killed, so he needed to be revived as soon as possible. Moreover, the remaining people of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan had taken away a portion of the most important treasures of the two temples. If he wanted to find them, he needed to rely on Saint Weiwei's laws of the Eye. Chapter 803. Buzz, the resurrection ability, was activated. This time, there was no green light enveloping the corpse, but the wounds on the corpse were quickly healing. In the past, the resurrection ability still needed to rely on the reverse nurturing ability to heal wounds. However, after the formation of the puppet law had a self-healing effect, so there was no need to rely on the reverse nurturing ability. After an hour, Weiwei in, the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, finally came back to life after his injuries were healed. The more powerful a person was, the longer it would take to revive. Even with Gray's current level, he still needed an hour to revive. This was enough to show how powerful the other party was. There was no need to doubt the strength of the other party. If they fought again and the other party was on guard, Gray might not have the confidence to defeat or even kill the other party. From now on, you'll be called Holy One. The Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei and's original identity could no longer be used. Gray handed a golden mask to the Sacred Eye Clan Saint Wei Wei and named him. According to Gray's plan, Annihilation class people would have Shadow as their serial number, and so on. Rule class people would have Saint as their serial number, and so on. The enemy was Rule class, and he was the first Rule class to be revived, so he was named Saint One. Yes, although the Sacred Eye race, Saint Wei Wei In, had many memories of his time as a veteran Rule-level powerhouse, he still responded respectfully. The control of the resurrection ability was absolute, and the other party had no chance of breaking free. Afterwards, Gray tossed out the corpse of the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Alex. He used his resurrection ability again, spending over half an hour to revive him. It took less time than the resurrection of the Sacred Eye Clan's Saint Wei Wei In. It was enough to show that the other party was still lacking compared to a veteran rule-level powerhouse. From now on, you'll be called Saint Two. Gray also took out a golden mask and gave it to the other party. The other party also responded respectfully. Gray left the plane and teleported to a place far away from the Temple of Time and Space. He then summoned Saint One. Don't resist. I want to use your abilities to search for the people who escaped from the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye Clan. Using the puppet ability to control the body of the first saint, Gray used the Rule of the Eye. Then, in between Saint One's eyebrows, where there was only a vertical scar, suddenly split open, revealing a golden vertical eye. This was the core of the Law of Eyes. With this golden vertical eye, even if they were dozens of kilometers away, they could still track down the person they wanted to track, unless the person hid in a plane. Information about the Saint of Light flashed through his mind. The scene in the golden vertical eye started to change rapidly. All sorts of scenes flashed through his eyes. Finally, it stopped at an image. In a room that was not very well decorated, there were 4 people: an old man, a middle-aged man, a beautiful woman, and a young woman. I've just received news that the temple has fallen. The beautiful woman was dressed in red and had a beautiful face. However, at this moment, her face was filled with worry. It's over. The Radiant Saint Hall is done for. The middle-aged man spoke. His voice was dejected. His fingernails dug deep into his flesh due to the grief and indignation in his heart, causing blood to flow out. Monster, Gray Fergus is a monster. The old man's face was filled with shock and fear. According to the news they had received, Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye Clan had died at the hands of Gray Fergus. It was exactly because Saint Wei Wei had been killed by Gray Fergus that the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye Clan had suffered a great defeat. He was not even at the level of Laws, but he already possessed the battle prowess to kill veteran experts at the level of Laws. If he was not a monster, then what was he? His battle prowess is comparable to veteran experts at the level of Laws. Even Saint Wei Wei died at his hands. The young woman's face was beautiful and could even be described as perfect. However, she was pale right now. She was the Saint of Light, Aurora. Out of everyone from the Radiant Saint Hall, she had come into contact with Gray Fergus the earliest. Although she had been defeated by him in the plane, the difference in battle prowess was almost negligible. Afterwards, she encountered him a second time in the Flamestone Desert. At that time, he had displayed the ability of 2 Laws. His battle prowess had exceeded hers by quite a lot. Even so, she still did not believe that she could not catch up to him. She still believed that it was possible. But now, in just a year's time, he already possessed the battle prowess to kill veteran experts at the level of Laws, while she was still a little away from becoming an Annihilation Saint Hall powerhouse. Not only did the gap between them not close, but it had even widened. She no longer had any interest in catching up to him due to such a great difference. When the difference was too great, all that remained was powerlessness and not the desire to catch up. The destruction of the Radiant Saint Hall is already an indisputable fact. What we need to consider next is how to avoid the pursuit of the Space-Time Temple and Darkness Temple, and how to survive. The old man glanced past the 3 of them and sighed deeply. He did not mention anything about revenge, because they knew extremely well that there was no possibility of revenge at all. Right now, Grey Fergus possessed strength that far exceeded theirs, and Grey Fergus was still so young. With him present, there was no possibility of revenge at all. We're still within the range of the Radiant Saint Hall. It's not particularly safe. We need to leave as soon as possible. It's best if we can retreat to the coast where there are fewer people, said the beautiful woman. That's right. That's all we can do. The old man nodded. Hiding in the coastal area was the best way to avoid the pursuit at the moment. There's no time to lose. We'll set off immediately after dark. At this moment, a black-haired figure appeared out of thin air in the room with the door tightly shut, becoming the fifth person in the room. Sorry, you're not going anywhere. Gray smiled at the four of them. He was smiling, but his body was filled with killing intent. Through Saint One's ability of the laws of eyes, he found the four of them and used Saint One's eyes to determine their location. Knowing their location, he could use his teleportation ability, so he teleported into the room. Grey Fergus, why are you here? A person suddenly appeared in the room, and this person was Grey. The four of them suddenly jumped up from their seats in shock. Their faces were filled with shock. At this moment, what they were most afraid of was not the Space-Time Temple, nor was it Saint Kuluo of the Space-Time Temple, but Grey Fergus in front of them. This was because he had the record of killing veteran lore-ranked experts. Even Saint Kuluo did not have this record. It's the Sacred Eye Clan. Has the Sacred Eye Clan sided with you? The Holy Maiden of the Light, Aurora, exclaimed. Only the Sacred Eye Clan could find them so quickly. The Sacred Eye Clan must be behind the other party. You don't need to know this. You just need to die in peace. Cold killing intent enveloped the four of them from Grey. Run! Bang, bang, bang. Sensing Grey's murderous intent, the four of them felt their hearts sink. They smashed through the house and rushed out with the fastest speed they had ever used in their lives. The four of them fled in different directions. Facing Grey Fergus, who had the record of killing low-ranked experts, they could only escape separately to have a chance of survival. Do you think you can escape? Looking at the four holes in the house and the four of them escaping through the holes, Grey did not chase after them. He just stood there quietly. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A strange scene appeared. The four of them who had escaped from the room appeared in the room again. Spatial teleportation. They had already escaped a few miles away, but they suddenly returned to the room. The four of them screamed in horror and rushed out of the room again. In the end, the four of them returned to the room again. The four of them looked at Grey in horror. Despair appeared on their faces, but under their survival instincts, they rushed out of the house again to escape. However, they were teleported back again. Even the saints of the Sacred Eye Clan could not escape. Do you think you can be an exception? The black ball floated above his finger. Grey looked at the four of them disdainfully. Fight it out with him. The four of them knew that it was useless to escape. Other than killing the other party, there was no other way to escape. Their bloodlust was aroused, and they brazenly attacked Grey. Grey stood still, but the four of their attacks were teleported away before they could reach Grey. They exploded in the distance. Puffed! The black ball floating above Grey's finger rushed out. Black light flashed and pierced through the middle-aged man's chest. The middle-aged man's chest was instantly penetrated from front to back. Large amounts of blood gushed out. His eyes were filled with horror, despair, and indignation. The middle-aged man's body collapsed weakly. Puffed! The black ball did not stop after piercing through the middle-aged man's chest. Instead, it changed direction and went around the old man's back. It pierced through the old man's chest. Then, it attacked the beautiful woman. Her face was filled with despair as it pierced through her chest. Finally, it attacked its final target, the Holy Maiden of the Light, Aurora. Looking at the incoming black ball and witnessing the death of her three companions, the Holy Maiden of the Light, Aurora's panicked expression returned to calmness. Her lips curled into a smile. It was a sad yet bitter smile. She was like the most beautiful flower that was about to wither. Puff! The black ball finally pierced through her chest and pierced through her heart. Her beauty was suffocating. She was one of the most beautiful people Grey had ever seen. However, Grey could not leave such a threat alive. Although she could not threaten him, she could threaten the others related to him, such as Sophia and the Fergus family. Grey sighed. He sighed for the other party's death. It had nothing to do with right or wrong. It was just a matter of different standpoints. The Holy Maiden of a Light Temple was his enemy. Therefore, she was his enemy. Therefore, she had to die. Using his resurrection ability, Gray revived the four of them. He named the old man Ing Wu, the middle-aged man Ing Lu, the beautiful woman Ing Chi, and the holy maiden Aurora Ing Ba. From now on, there was no more Holy Maiden of the Light Temple. There were only Ing Wu, Ing Lu, Ing Chi, and Ing Ba. Chapter 804. After sending the four of them into the plane, Gray teleported and disappeared from the dilapidated room. When he reappeared, he was in an underground secret room. Aside from him, there were a total of 5 people in the secret room. They were the core members of the Sacred Eye clan who had escaped. Without giving them a chance to react, Gray's spatial maze enveloped the 5 of them before he struck out with lightning speed and killed them all. His resurrection ability was Resurrection. After naming the 5 of them and sending them into the plane, Gray teleported back to the space-time temple. It had only been 10 minutes since he left. No one would have thought that Gray would kill the core members of the Radiant St. Hall and the Sacred Eye clan who had escaped in that time. He had completely dealt with the threat of the Radiant St. Hall and the Sacred Eye clan. Lord Gray. With the crisis averted, Gray and Sophia walked side by side in the space-time temple. Anyone who saw him, even elders, could not help but stop and greet him respectfully. The main reason why they had been able to survive the space-time blink was because Gray had killed the saint of the Sacred Eye clan, Wei Wei, and turned the situation around. Otherwise, the space-time temple would have been in danger. Everyone from a space-time temple was filled with gratitude towards Gray, who had done all of this. They even felt reverence towards him. Although Gray was not an expert of the rules, he possessed the battle prowess to kill veteran experts of the rules. In this world where strength reigned supreme, it was enough to win their reverence. It was far too dangerous this time. I never thought that the Radiant St. Hall and the Sacred Eye clan would work together to attack us. Fortunately, the space-time temple managed to survive this crisis. Sophia sighed gently with a smile on her face. When she saw the people from the space-time temple greet Gray respectfully, she was even happier than when she received everyone's compliments. It was indeed far too dangerous. Gray also sighed gently. There was no need to mention just how dangerous this battle was. Even he had been surrounded by danger. He had almost died at the hands of the saint of the Sacred Eye clan. Fortunately, he had won. Otherwise, the consequences would have been extremely severe. It was very likely that the fate of the Radiant St. Hall and the Sacred Eye clan would be the fate of him and the space-time temple. I'm returning this to you. Sophia took off the purple ring and handed it to Gray. Keep it. I was going to give it to you anyway. Shaking his head, Gray didn't reach out to take it. Is this a proposal? Sophia rolled her eyes. That's right, but someone doesn't seem to be willing. Who said I'm not willing? The two of them walked forward as they talked, and their hands slowly clasped together. The reason why they had chosen to get engaged instead of getting married was because the greatest threat was the Radiant St. Hall. They were unable to invite their parents to their wedding. Now that the greatest threat to the Radiant St. Hall had been eliminated, the plane was naturally unobstructed, and it was time for them to get married. I want to return to the plane, Sophia said with half of her body leaning on Gray's shoulder. Then let's go back now. Gray smiled and took a step forward. He and Sophia were already tens of thousands of miles away. After taking a few steps, they appeared in a desert. In front of them, there was a black barrier that was hundreds of meters long and wide. It was the passage to the plane. Who is it? Without receiving news that the Radiant St. Hall had been destroyed, the remaining members of the Radiant St. Hall who were still guarding the plane passage roared and charged at the two of them. There were more than 10 of them, and there was no lack of annihilation grades among them. After what had happened last time, the strength of the guards here had increased again. Gray didn't even bother to look at these people. He waved his hand gently, and purple light sprinkled down like moonlight. It sprinkled on these people's attacking abilities and on these people's bodies. Under the purple light, the attacking abilities disappeared as if they had never appeared. The people who were enveloped by the purple light screamed as their bodies rapidly aged, died, and rotted. In the end, only rotten bones were left. With just one hit, more than 10 people, including a few annihilation grades, were killed. Pop! The plane passage gently rippled. A gap appeared. Gray and Sophia stepped through it. Dong! 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 The two of them had just entered the plane when a giant thing came toward them. It was a giant thing that looked like a human. Its entire body was green. Boom! A giant fist that was like a millstone came crashing down toward the two of them. Schwa! 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 Gray and Sophia stood where they were. From beneath Gray's feet, many shadow tentacles appeared. They bound the ferocious fist that came crashing down. They followed the fist up and bound the giant green thing. The giant green thing was the rune puppet that Gray had given to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royalty. Mr. Gray and Mr. Sophia, dozens of people looked at them from afar. The rune puppet that they relied on was easily blocked. The power of the people who came was definitely terrifying. Their hearts were cold. However, when they saw that the people who came were Gray and Sophia, they were relieved and surrounded them excitedly. Among the dozens of people, there were people from the Purple Moon Kingdom and people from the Jewel Kingdom. After Gray and Sophia greeted these people, they teleported away from the border of the plane. When they reappeared, they were already in a magnificent palace. It was the Purple Moon Kingdom's palace. Mr. Sophia is back. Mr. Sophia is back. Seeing Gray and Sophia appear, especially Sophia, the palace suddenly became lively. Not long after, the Purple Moon Kingdom's king, queen, and eldest princess Hylia all arrived. Father, mother, sister, I'm back. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Although they were from the royal family, the reunion after a long separation was no different from an ordinary family. Their excitement was overflowing. Gray stood quietly to the side, leaving the four of them some space. After a long time, the four of them calmed down a little. The Purple Moon Kingdom's king frowned slightly and said with a slight reproach in his voice, "It's too risky. You shouldn't have forced your way back." The last time Gray returned to the plane, he paid a visit to the Purple Moon Kingdom's king. From Gray, the Purple Moon Kingdom's king already knew that the entrance to the other side of the plane was guarded by powerhouses from the Temple of Light. Gray had forced his way into the plane with his own strength. Now that Gray and Sophia had returned to the plane again, it was not hard to guess that they must have forced their way in. Although he was happy to see Sophia, such an approach made him very worried. "That's right, Gray, Sophia. It's too risky. Don't do it next time." The queen and her eldest daughter, Hylia, were also worried. "Father, mother, don't worry. The Temple of Light is no more. From now on, there will be no one guarding the outside of the plane." Feeling the concern of the three people, Sophia felt a burst of emotion in her heart as she said with a smile, "What? The Temple of Light? No more?" The eyes of the Purple Moon Kingdom's king and the other two widened. They were so shocked that they almost stood up from their seats. According to the information obtained at the beginning and the information brought back by Gray last time, the Temple of Light was one of the most powerful forces in the Source world. It had existed for more than 100,000 years. Its history might even be longer than the history of their plane. Moreover, the Temple of Light had powerhouses with a lifespan of tens of thousands of years. A lifespan of tens of thousands of years was terrifying just thinking about it. Even an ordinary person with ordinary aptitude could definitely become a terrifying figure after cultivating for tens of thousands of years. Not to mention those who could reach the realm of laws were definitely not ordinary. And such a powerful force was actually destroyed now. They found it hard to believe. Yes, today, the Temple of Light was destroyed by Gray and the Space-Time Temple. From today onwards, the Temple of Light no longer exists. Sophia nodded affirmatively. Is the Space-Time Temple a force even more powerful than the Temple of Light? What does it mean to work with Gray? The three were shocked by the power of the Space-Time Temple. Even such a powerful Temple of Light could be destroyed, so the power of the Space-Time Temple was imaginable. However, what they could not figure out was why Sophia said that the Space-Time Temple and Gray had worked together to destroy the Temple of Light. Could it be that Gray had also contributed greatly to the destruction of the Temple of Light? Literally, Gray's current battle prowess is comparable to those at the Realm of Laws. If it weren't for him, the space-time temple might not have been able to destroy the Temple of Light. Sophia's voice was slightly proud. Battle prowess comparable to those at the Realm of Laws? Gray's current battle prowess is comparable to those at the Realm of Laws. The three of them sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Gray in shock. Those at the Realm of Laws were known as the most powerful existences in the Origin world. The current Gray actually possessed such battle prowess. At the same time, they could not help but feel excited. With Gray's relationship with Sophia, the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom would possess a powerhouse at the Realm of Laws as their backer. Even if they entered the Origin world in the future, they would probably be able to do whatever they wanted. Your Majesty, I've returned this time partly because Sophia hasn't seen you in a long time, and partly because Sophia and I are preparing to get married. I hope you'll allow it. Gray requested. Preparing to get married? All right. The king of the Purple Moon Kingdom was overjoyed when he heard that the two of them were preparing to get married. The queen and her daughter, Hylia, smiled as well. Naturally, it was impossible for them to be dissatisfied with Gray. They had already intended to do so when they were in the realm, let alone now that Gray possessed battle prowess at the Realm of Laws. Chapter 805. A few months later, a grand wedding was approaching. It was the wedding of Gray and Sophia. The entire wedding was organized by the Time and Space Temple. The scale was extremely grand. Although it was not the largest in history, it was definitely rare in history. There were even many Saint-level factions that came to congratulate them. Among them were the Chaos Temple, the Sacred Soldier race, and the Darkness Temple, which had dealt with Gray before. In addition, there were many Saint-level factions that had not interacted with Gray before. An ordinary wedding, even the wedding of a Saint-level figure, would definitely not be so grand. Even the Saint-level factions that were not familiar with Saint representatives to congratulate them. All of this was because of Gray's battle results. He had not yet reached the rule rank, but he already had 3 rule abilities. 2 rule-level experts had already died at his hands, and one of them was even a veteran rule-level expert. If he already had such combat strength before reaching the rule rank, how strong would his combat strength be when he reached the rule rank? By then, his combat strength would probably immediately jump to the top of the rule rank. Towards such a person with such great potential, the usual attitude of the various Saint-level forces was to either kill them before they grew up or warmly befriend them and turn them into their allies. However, now that the other party was fully fledged, not only was his combat strength comparable to a veteran rule-level expert, but he also had the ability to teleport. If he wanted to leave, no one could stop him. Since they could not kill him, they naturally had to make him their ally. Even if they could not become allies, they had to be friendly. Now that the other party was getting married, it was the best time to make friends. Therefore, many Saint-level factions had sent representatives. In a living room, Gray and Sophia met Blanca, Landry, and George, who had explored the underwater ruins together, and their families. When we heard that the Leopold family was destroyed, the 3 of us were very worried. Fortunately, we heard that you were fine. Blanca was wearing a slim-fit dress. Her figure was graceful, and her attitude was polite but not reserved. Knowing that she had a close relationship with Gray, her family was excited. Everyone in the family was excited. They had never thought that their family would be related to such an existence. Although their family was the strongest family with an annihilation-level overlord, that was all. Saint-level factions could easily destroy a family like theirs. However, with this relationship, it was immediately different. Even if a Saint-level faction wanted to touch their family, they would have to think carefully. After all, they had made friends with an expert who had killed a veteran rule-level expert. As the future head of the Manti family, she was also very happy that the family had such a backer. However, she was not too deliberate. Gray wanted to make friends with her. Which power did it? I once asked my family to inquire about this matter from the Chaos Temple, but the Chaos Temple seemed to be very afraid of the power that made a move. They especially warned us not to interfere. It's the Holy Temple and the Sacred Eye race. Both are Saint-level factions. Neither of them is weaker than the Chaos Holy Temple. The Chaos Holy Temple probably doesn't want to get into trouble. Sophia explained. The Holy Temple and the Sacred Eye race. No wonder Blanca, George, and Landry suddenly understood. In the past few months, Gray's battle achievements have been widely spread in the Origin world. Among them was the shocking battle achievements of killing the saints of the Sacred Eye race and the Holy Temple. Previously, they were wondering why Gray would become enemies with two saint-level factions at the same time. Now, they understood that these two factions had already targeted Gray before. After chatting with them for a while, Gray and Sophia said goodbye and left. Too many factions had come to congratulate them today, including many saint-level factions. If they were not familiar with the three of them, they would not have stayed for so long. At most, they would have gone to greet them and left. Which faction is next? Walking out of the room, Sophia asked with a smile. The Elemental Temple. Although I don't have much contact with the Elemental Temple, since they are here, I naturally have to receive them. Gray said, That's true. After all, they are saint-level factions. Although we are not afraid, we still have to treat them with the corresponding courtesy. Sophia nodded and walked with Gray to the Elemental Temple. However, at this moment, a disciple of the Space-Time Temple hurried over and bowed respectfully to the two of them. Lord Gray, Your Highness Saintess, there are people outside who claim to be your friends. A friend of both of us? It was bustling outside the Space-Time Temple. Many factions lined up to enter and were led into the Space-Time Temple by the disciples. Of course, not all factions were qualified to participate in the wedding banquet. As a wedding banquet held by a saint-level faction, the standards were naturally extremely high. Outside factions were not allowed to enter unless they were from a powerful clan. Even if the local factions of the Space-Time Dominion were relaxed, only the top clans were qualified to enter. Those below the top clans were not qualified to enter at all. Sorry, only people from top factions are allowed to enter. A group of 5 women arrived outside the Space-Time Temple, but because they were not from a top faction, they were politely rejected by the Space-Time Temple's disciple. Another small faction that wants to climb up to Lord Gray. Behind them was a group of 7 people. These 7 people were dressed in extraordinary clothes and exuded a noble aura. They were from one of the top clans in the Space-Time Dominion. Among them, a young man could not help but sneer when he saw the 5 of them being rejected by the Space-Time Temple's disciple. While waiting in line to enter, he had already seen several small factions trying to climb up to Lord Gray, but they were all rejected at the door. Can you make an exception? I am acquainted with Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess. Among the 5 women was a black-haired young woman. After being rejected by the Space-Time Temple's disciple, she frowned slightly. Does this woman want to die? She actually dares to pretend to be a friend of Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess. The young man was shocked. He looked at the black-haired young woman as if she were an idiot. He did not believe that she was a friend of Lord Gray and Her Highness Sophia. If she was, why would she line up here? As far as he knew, Lord Gray and Lord Sophia's friends were all invited by the Space-Time Temple's disciples, who would then personally welcome them into the Space-Time Temple. There was no need for her to line up here. Do you really know Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess? The Space-Time Temple's disciple in charge of the reception also looked at the black-haired young woman suspiciously. After all, this woman was not among the people invited. Sir, I'm not lying. I didn't know the 2 of them. The 4 women beside the black-haired young woman nervously tugged at her clothes, but the black-haired young woman remained unmoved and nodded affirmatively. Please wait a moment. I will have someone inform Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess. The Space-Time Temple's disciple thought for a moment before speaking in a slightly polite tone. Although he did not believe that the black-haired young woman knew Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess, it was better to be safe than sorry. As a precaution, he decided to inform them. Whoosh! A short moment later, just as the factions behind the 5 women were getting impatient, 2 figures appeared in a flash of light. They were none other than Gray and Sophia. Galinway, it really is you. The 2 of them immediately noticed the black-haired young woman in the group of 5. She was none other than the Gem Queen, Galinway. When they had left the planar plane, a total of 4 people had left. Three of them had already reunited, but the last person was nowhere to be found. When they heard that someone knew the two of them, they immediately thought of the Gem Queen, Galinwei. "Gray Sophia, long time no see. Congratulations." The Gem Queen, Galinwei, was overjoyed to finally meet her old friends. The origin world was just too big. In such a large world, it was far too difficult to inquire about other people. It was only after news of Gray and Sophia's wedding spread throughout the origin world that she finally received news of the two and hurried over. "This isn't the place to talk. Let's go in first." Accompanied by Gray and Sophia, one on the left and one on the right, Gemstone Queen Glinwei and her four companions entered the Temple of Time and Space, finally disappearing from the line of sight of the crowd. "It's Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess." She really knows Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess. Seeing the Gem Queen leave with Gray and Sophia, the Space-Time Temple's disciple in charge of receiving them heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he had been cautious and had not offended the other party. As for the young man, his face was filled with shock and envy. "Rich, that woman is rich," the young man exclaimed in envy. Not only did she know Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess, but she also had a close relationship with them. No matter what her identity was or what faction she belonged to, after today, her identity would become extraordinary. Even a top family's disciple would have to treat her with respect. It wasn't just him, the other people in the line had envious expressions as well. Their displeasure for being delayed by the other party had long since vanished, and they were thinking in their hearts that they had to be courteous and make friends with the woman and the power behind her after they entered. People like Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess were existences that only Annihilation-class giants had the qualifications to be friends with, but only a little. As for them, there was no need to even think about it. Since they could not be friends with the two of them, they might as well be friends with people who were close to them. The black-haired woman was obviously such a person. Being friends with the black-haired woman and the faction behind her was also related to Lord Gray and Her Highness Saintess. Their family's status in the space-time territory would also increase. Chapter 806. Were you teleported to back then? How did you survive these past few years? After welcoming Galinwei's group of 5 into a loft and taking a seat, Sophia looked at Galinwei and asked excitedly, "Back then, I was randomly teleported to a nearby city in the space-time territory." Galinwei slowly recounted her memories. Back then, she had been teleported to the space-time territory like Sophia. Moreover, her luck was better, and she did not appear in a forest where powerful blood fiends ran rampant. After careful consideration, she became a blood fiend hunter and hunted blood fiends for a living in exchange for living and cultivation resources. Her aptitude was not bad, and in addition to the cultivation conditions and abundant resources in the origin world, she had now reached the realm of magic light. The 4 girls beside her were homeless girls that she had taken in over the years. "I didn't expect us to be so close to each other." Gray and Sophia sighed inwardly. Galinwei spoke of her experiences very calmly, but everyone knew about the dangers of blood fiends. Along the way, there was no lack of danger, even life and death. "Have you found Galinwei?" At this moment, a purple-haired man pushed open the door and walked into the room. It was Francis. "Francis, long time no see." The 4 of them had finally gathered, and Galinwei greeted him with a smile. "Yes, it's really been a long time." Francis sighed slightly and recalled the time when the 4 of them held a random teleportation orb and their futures were unknown. "Now it's finally all right. The 4 of us are finally reunited." 2 days later, in the Space-Time Temple's banquet hall, Gray and Sophia's wedding officially began amidst a grand and festive atmosphere. Gray was dressed in a well-ironed black suit, and his sturdy and well-proportioned physique was fully displayed. He was strong, but did not lose his gentle beauty. His black hair was slanted and flowed elegantly. His pair of blue eyes had a psychedelic luster, and his entire body exuded a mysterious aura. Sophia was dressed in a slim white dress inlaid with precious gems, revealing her slender and perfect figure. Above her ears was a pair of blue tassels, and around her snow-white neck was a string of sapphires. Elegance and nobility coexisted. At this moment, she was flawless. Congratulations to Sir Grey and Madame Sophia. Congratulations, Lord Grey. Congratulations, Your Highness Saintess. Grey and Sophia walked on the red carpet in the middle of the banquet hall. Many factions sent their blessings to the two of them. Even a few rule-ranked experts were present. For example, Saint Coro, Saint Glenn of the Darkness Temple, and Saint Randy of the Chaos Temple. Through the conversation with Saint Randy, Grey confirmed his initial judgment that Saint Randy had indeed seen him casting the space barrier. At that time, he had even thought of recruiting him. However, after returning to the Chaos Temple and asking them to investigate his identity, Saint Randy gave up on recruiting him because the Chaos Temple already knew that Grey was not from the Chaos territory. Although Grey had ordered the Leopold family to control the information, how could it be hidden from the eyes and ears of a Saint-rank force? After knowing that Grey was not from the Chaos territory and was very likely from a Saint-rank force, he naturally gave up on the idea of recruiting him. Thank you for coming to our wedding. Walking to the center of the banquet hall, Grey and Sophia bowed to express their gratitude. Although they did not know many of the people present, they were naturally grateful that they could attend this wedding banquet and give their blessings. In the end, the wedding ended in a grand atmosphere. From then on, Grey and Sophia officially became husband and wife, and the two of them moved in together. A few days later, in a courtyard larger than the original Elder's courtyard in the Space-Time Temple, Grey and Sophia finally had some private space after sending off many guests. In the garden, under the lazy sun, Sophia flipped through a precious leather book while Grey flipped through the gifts he had received this time. The gifts he had received this time were extraordinarily generous. Basically, they were all precious items that were difficult to buy on the market, such as level 5-mana potions and level 5-mana herbs. There were even level 6-mana herbs and potions. In addition, there were a few pieces of metal that could be used as materials for rule weapons. Although they were not too big and were far from enough to make rule weapons, their value was definitely comparable to level 6-mana potions. They were all gifts from a few Saint-rank forces. It could be seen that these Saint-rank forces had put in a lot of effort to befriend Grey. Grey could roughly understand the thoughts of these Saint-rank forces. He could only say that they were overthinking. He had his own principles. Even if these Saint-rank forces did not deliberately befriend him, he would not take the initiative to attack these Saint-rank forces when he reached the rule level in the future unless they provoked him first. What are you reading? After spending a few hours, Grey finally took a rough inventory of the gifts. He looked at Sophia and asked. As he asked, he leaned his head over and sniffed the pleasant fragrance on her body as he looked at her book. Saint Hunters? About Saint Hunters? Seeing the contents of the book, Grey raised his eyebrows. Now, there were very few factions or people that could make him fear, but Saint Hunters were definitely one of them. To be able to make a rule-level powerhouse feel despair and leave behind his last words, one could imagine how powerful the other party was. A conservative estimate was that the other party's combat strength definitely surpassed that of a veteran rule-level powerhouse. What worried him even more was the style of this faction's actions. Ordinary people or factions would always have a motive for doing things, but the other party completely treated rule-level powerhouses as prey and had no other motive. Such a person or faction was obviously very troublesome. Before the other party made a move, they would not even know that they had been targeted. Yes, I kept feeling a little concerned, so I looked for related books to read. Sophia nodded. Originally, Saint Hunters did not have much to do with her. Saint Hunter's goal was rule-level powerhouses, and whether she could become a rule-level powerhouse was another matter. Even if she could, it would definitely be a matter of years later. However, now that she and Grey had become husband and wife, and Grey had rule-level combat strength, this meant that Grey might also become the target of Saint Hunters. This was already related to her. For some reason, she felt uneasy. She did not know if this was a psychological effect or an instinctive warning. Driven by this, she could not help but search for information about Saint Hunters. Did you find anything? Knowing that Sophia was concerned about him, Grey's heart warmed as he asked. No one has seen Saint Hunters. Those that have are already dead, so we didn't get much information. However, I feel like Saint Hunters aren't blindly hunting rule-level powerhouses. They're not blindly hunting rule-level powerhouses? Gray looked at Sophia curiously. Yes, Saint Hunters first appeared 50,000 years ago. Until now, they've hunted more than 10 rule-level powerhouses. I found that the rule abilities of these more than 10 rule-level powerhouses are repetitive and connected. Sophia nodded solemnly. Repetitive and connected? The rule-level powerhouses that were killed either had the same rule ability or their rule abilities could be perfectly connected. Take a look. Were the rule abilities with repetitive and connected properties? Gray asked with a serious expression. Let me look for it. I know very few rule abilities, so I definitely can't find all of them. I can only find the parts that I know. I got it. There's a repetitive ability, a time rule ability, a space rule ability, a connected rule ability, and a curse rule ability. After Sophia finished speaking, she was stunned and did not speak for a long time. Her eyes were filled with shock, and her hair stood on end. Gray's face could not help but turn slightly pale. The 3 rule abilities that Sophia mentioned were all in his possession. An inexplicable chill rose from his heart. If the hunting pattern of the Saint Hunters was really like this, then he was definitely someone who fit the target of the Saint Hunters. The sun was warm. Although it was not blazing hot, it was extremely warm. However, the 2 of them felt a little cold for some reason. Pa! 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 The sound of footsteps approached. The 2 of them were shocked and quickly turned around. When they saw that the person was one of the maids in charge of taking care of this courtyard, they heaved a sigh of relief. What's the matter? Gray asked. Lord Gray, St. Coro has asked you to go over. He said that he has something to discuss with you. I got it. You may leave. Gray nodded slightly, indicating for the other party to leave. He then looked at Sophia. These are just our speculations. They might not be true. Don't scare yourself. I understand. Sophia took a deep breath and nodded. I'll go to St. Coro's place first. I'll be back soon. Patting Sophia on the shoulder, Gray turned around and left the garden, heading for the palace where St. Coro resided in the depths of the Space-Time Temple. Led by a disciple of the Space-Time Temple, Gray met St. Coro in the living room. The other party still looked old and did not seem to have much lifespan left. Seeing Gray arrive, the other party smiled at Gray. Lord Coro, why did you call me over? It's nothing too important. I just wanted to ask you, are you used to living in the Space-Time Temple? St. Coro smiled. Living well. The temple master and the elders have taken good care of me, Greg said with a smile. That's good. St. Kualuo nodded. Presumably, you can also see that I don't have much lifespan left. Lord Coro, can't you use longevity medicine to prolong your life? Gray asked with a frown. I've already taken all kinds of longevity medicine. My body is already completely immune to longevity medicine. No longevity medicine can prolong my life. If I want to prolong my life, unless what? Gray asked. Unless you can help me. A sinister voice suddenly rang out, and before this sinister voice could be heard, a spatial ripple had already swept over Gray's body. Gray then felt space and time shift. The world was still the same world, but everything had become illusory. Having experienced this before, Gray immediately understood that he had been dragged into the shadow dimension. Chapter 807. St. Coro, what is the meaning of this? Gray's body tensed, and he did his best to appear calm as he looked at St. Coro. He had not expected St. Kualuo to attack him. Kualuo was the last person to attack him. After all, his relationship with the Space-Time Temple was not shallow, and they had even worked together to fight against external enemies. His value to the Space-Time Temple was the greatest if he was alive. However, the other party had attacked him. Furthermore, the words the other party had said before the attack had caused him to feel an indescribable chill. This old man doesn't have much lifespan left, so I want you to help me. Looking at Gray, St. Coro had a smile on his face. However, when paired with his pitch-black eyes, no matter how one looked at him, he looked extremely terrifying. St. Coro must be joking. You don't have much lifespan left, so how could I help you? Gray dryly laughed, and his body tensed up ready to attack or retreat at any time. No, you can help me. That law ability of yours that can revive the dead can help me. Saint Koro stared at Gray as if he was staring at prey. How did you know I had the puppet law? Gray's pupils constricted and his expression changed. The puppet law could revive the dead, an ability that was far too shocking. If other Law Realm experts found out, they would definitely attack him. Thus, he had been avoiding the puppet law from being discovered. For this reason, he had not even told Sophia. But how did this person know? The chill in Gray's heart deepened. Of course I saw it. Saint Kaluo rubbed his forehead, and then a crack appeared between his brows. A golden vertical eye opened. Law of Eyes. In addition to time law and space law abilities, you also have the Law of Eyes. Gray's expression changed, and he felt a sense of danger. The reason this person knew he had the puppet law ability was because he had been using the Law of Eyes to observe him. What made him feel even more uneasy was the fact that this person had 3 law abilities. Now that he was in the other party's illusory space, the situation was already very disadvantageous for him. In addition, the other party was a rule-level powerhouse with 3 types of rule abilities. The situation was even more disadvantageous for him. The Law of Puppets, what a nice name. As long as I can obtain the Law of Puppets, my lifespan will definitely increase again, and even... Saint Kaluo's face revealed a fanatical expression. If the other party's eyes could be seen at this moment, they would definitely be extremely scorching. Sees? Gray's expression changed drastically. The other party actually intended to seize his puppet rule power, and seemed to be very confident in doing so. The chill in his body increased abruptly, as if there was a chill pouring into his body. That's right. I'm going to seize your puppeteer rule power. Saint Kaluo replied. How is this possible? Gray's eyes were filled with disbelief. Ordinary rule-level powerhouses naturally can't do it, but I can. Saint Kaluo's face was filled with pride as he revealed this shocking secret. Many people think that the first law ability I possess is the Law of Space, but in fact the first law ability I possess is the Law of Seas. The subsequent Law of Space and Law of Time were all plundered by me through the Law of Seas. Plundered the Law of Space and Law of Time. You're Saint Hunter? Hearing the other party mention the Law of Space and Law of Time, Gray suddenly remembered the Saint Hunter hunting law that he and Sophia had deduced not long ago. He immediately looked at Saint Kaluo in shock. That's right, I'm a Saint Hunter. Being stared at by Gray in shock, Saint Kaluo proudly admitted it generously. Your inference is not wrong. The reason why those rule-level powerhouses were targeted by me was all because their law abilities could perfectly connect with mine. My puppeteer rule ability can also perfectly connect with your rule ability. Gray looked at the other party in horror. That's right. Your puppet law ability can perfectly connect with my existing law ability. So fulfill my wish. Contribute your puppeteer rule ability and become a part of my ability. Saint Kaluo's face was full of excitement. The golden vertical eye between his eyebrows stared at Gray as if he was staring at his prey. Being stared at by the other party's golden vertical eye, Gray's body unconsciously broke out in a cold sweat. He felt an unprecedented sense of danger. Run. Using teleport, Gray did not hesitate to teleport away. Judging from the other party's words just now, a conservative estimate was that the other party had at least 4 law abilities. The law ability he possessed might even be more than his. He had no chance of winning, so he did not hesitate to teleport away. Whoosh! With a flash of light, Gray's figure appeared. He appeared at the edge of the phantom space, which happened to be the edge of the space-time city. This was not the place he wanted to teleport to. Originally, he wanted to teleport tens of thousands of miles away, but when he reached the edge of the phantom space, under the effect of some kind of power, he broke free from the teleportation. It's useless. The phantom space is a self-contained space. Even if you have the ability to teleport, it will be difficult to leave this space. With a flash of light, Saint Kaluo's figure appeared. He looked at Gray with extreme calmness, not at all worried that Gray could escape. Gray's expression changed again and again. He knew that the other party was telling the truth. The weakness of the ability to teleport was that it could not penetrate the space barrier, and this phantom space was undoubtedly such a place. But it was impossible for him to just sit and wait for death. Shio. Using his space-time ability, a small but extremely powerful black ball appeared. Gray controlled the small black ball to crash into the barrier at the edge of the phantom space. Rumble. The small black ball and the barrier at the edge of the phantom space violently collided. The terrifying shockwaves caused even Gray to lose his footing. But such a fierce blow only caused some ripples on the barrier of the phantom space. The barrier of the phantom space was not damaged at all. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Unwilling to give up, Gray controlled the small black ball to crash into the barrier of the phantom space more than 10 times. However, the barrier of the phantom space was still not damaged at all, not even a crack. A futile struggle. St. Kaluo looked at Gray calmly. He had no intention of immediately capturing Gray. The other party was already a mouse in a cage. No matter how hard he struggled, it was useless. Although the phantom space was only a special space he had constructed with his spatial ability, it was naturally extremely sturdy when he used it with his realm that far exceeded that of an ordinary law. Not to mention that the other party had yet to reach the law realm. Even if the other party reached the law realm, it would definitely be difficult to break. Knowing that the phantom space barrier was difficult to break, Gray stopped the small black ball's attack and turned to look at St. Kaluo, who was looking at him calmly. Teleportation was blocked by the phantom space barrier, and he could not break through it. Then the only choice left was to fight. But could he really win? If defeating Saint Wei Wei of the Sacred Eye clan was difficult, then defeating St. Kaluo, who had mastered at least 4 types of nomological abilities, was a nightmare. Buzz, no matter how difficult it was, he could not give up hope of survival. Gritting his teeth, Gray moved. The space maze spread out with him as the center, enveloping St. Kaluo. Still not giving up? Looking at the space maze that was enveloping him, St. Kaluo's face showed disdain. He did not dodge, but stood where he was, allowing the space maze to envelop him. Whoosh! In the space maze, he took a few steps forward and walked toward Gray. However, after taking a few steps forward, he was immediately teleported away from Gray. Quite an interesting ability, but compared to the phantom space, it's still a little lacking. It doesn't form a domain. He made a faint evaluation. Swoosh! At this moment, under Gray's control, the small black ball suddenly appeared behind him through the space teleportation point, heading straight for his back. But just as it was about to hit him, it was as if he had eyes on the back of his head. He took a step to the side and easily dodged the small black ball, brushing past it. Swoosh! However, the small pitch-black ball that had just brushed past him immediately turned back and attacked him again. This time, it went straight for his face. Pa! He stretched out his hand and grabbed the pitch-black ball. The pitch-black ball, which was enough to kill a veteran rule-level expert, was easily grabbed by the other party. Gray's expression changed. He controlled the small black ball to struggle violently, but it could not break free at all. His opponent's hand looked thin, but it was like the world's strongest metal. No matter how the small black ball struggled, it could not break free. This ability is not bad. It's comparable to my space-time vortex, but it's still useless. Crack! St. Koro suddenly exerted force on the small black ball, and then a scene that shocked Gray appeared. The small black ball quickly deformed in his opponent's hand and finally shattered with a crack. Horrifying, extremely horrifying. His current strongest attack was actually so weak in front of his opponent. Although he had already overestimated his opponent's combat strength, it now seemed that he had still underestimated him. Defeating his opponent was not just a nightmare, but a hell. He hurriedly set up layers of space teleportation points around himself, firmly protecting himself in the center. Whoosh! Casually discarding the small black ball, St. Koro looked at Gray and disappeared. He had clearly used his teleportation ability to go to Gray's location. Gray's body tensed up. He wanted to use teleportation, but he forcefully restrained himself. The next moment, his opponent's figure appeared, but he did not appear next to Gray. Instead, he appeared rather far away from Gray. Clearly, This was not where he wanted to appear. Seeing this, Gray inwardly sighed in relief. He had long since discovered that the space maze had the ability to interfere with teleportation. Under the space maze, even his opponent's teleportation would be disrupted. Chapter 808. It can actually interfere with teleportation. This spatial maze is really interesting. Standing where he was, Saint Koro did not move, but raised his eyebrows. He should have been interrupted halfway through teleportation and then fell into the spatial teleportation point and was teleported away. So what? Saint Koro's figure began to become illusory, like a holographic phantom. The phantom space ability allowed the user to switch between reality and illusion. Saint Koro was now in a phantom state. In this state, all attacks directed at him would become ineffective and all attacks would pass through his body. Whoosh! In the phantom state, Saint Koro shot toward Gray and soon hit the spatial teleportation point under Gray's feet. However, what was surprising was that although he crashed into the teleportation point, he was not teleported away. Instead, he dashed through the teleportation point and headed straight for Gray. Not good. Gray's expression changed, and he used teleportation. Just as he was about to teleport, a skinny hand reached out to grab him. The moment he teleported away, the next moment, even a fraction of a second, this hand had already grabbed his throat. He was just a hair's breadth away from being caught. Fortunately, this was the case. Otherwise, he would probably be dead now. This was a hand that could even crush the black ball. It would be too easy to crush his throat. Whoosh! As soon as Gray teleported, the golden vertical eye between Saint Koro's eyebrows had already discovered him. His body was in a phantom state, and he rushed toward him again. Whoosh! Without any hesitation, Gray teleported again and disappeared. Almost as soon as he disappeared, the other's figure pounced on him again. Saint Koro was a powerful existence whose realm far exceeded the ordinary rule rank. Even a most basic speed was extremely terrifying. In addition, the spatial maze's range was limited. Within this limited range, the other's movement speed was not much slower than teleportation. If this continues, I'll definitely die. Although even with Saint 1 and Saint 2, it's very likely that we won't be his match. At least it'll give me time to catch my breath. After teleporting, Gray immediately opened the plane and summoned Saint 1 and Saint 2. At this time, Saint Koro had already arrived. Whoosh! Connected to Gray's mind, they understood Gray's current situation. The moment Saint 1 and Saint 2 appeared, they immediately attacked Saint Koro. A golden vertical eye opened between Saint 1's eyebrows and shot out a beam of golden light towards Saint Kaluo. A platinum light condensed in front of Saint 2, turning into a platinum spear that pierced towards Saint Kaluo. Whoosh! A pitch-black space-time vortex appeared and easily shattered the golden light and the platinum spear. Resurrection from the dead. The puppet law is truly a mystical law. I'm looking forward to it more and more. Looking at the two of them, Saint Kaluo was amazed. His eyes were filled with eagerness, and he actually temporarily gave up on paying attention to Gray. Chance! Gray's eyes lit up. Using his space-time ability, the small black ball condensed again, passing through the teleportation point and attacking Saint Kaluo from behind. However, just as the small black ball was about to hit Saint Kaluo's palm suddenly slapped behind him. Like swatting a fly, it slapped the small black ball. The small black ball instantly exploded, but Saint Kaluo did not turn his head from beginning to end. His gaze was fixed on Saint 1 and Saint 2, and the two of them felt their hair stand on end. Whoosh, whoosh. The two of them gritted their teeth and attacked Saint Kaluo again. The golden light and platinum spear attacked Saint Kaluo at the same time. Humph! Saint Kaluo must have felt impatient. A cold snort came from his mouth. Then, a pitch-black space-time vortex appeared, easily shattering the golden light and the platinum spear. Not only that, but the space-time vortex suddenly expanded like an inflated balloon, swallowing Saint 1 and Saint 2 in an instant. The two of them only had time to let out a scream before they lost all signs of life. The pitch-black space-time vortex disappeared, but the two of them were nowhere to be seen. Not even their bones were left. The two of them had completely disappeared. It was not that the two of them were weak, but that St. Kaluo was too strong. The reason Gray was able to hold on for short while under St. Kaluo's pursuit was because Gray had the spatial rule power, which was very suitable for escaping. However, the two's rule power was clearly not of this type. That's it. It's time to end this. St. Kaluo looked at Gray. His face turned completely cold, and a terrifying aura pressed down on Gray like an endless ocean. Spatial cracks appeared in the void. With just his aura alone, he could already shatter space. Confined, confined. A rhythmic voice rang out from St. Kaluo's mouth. It was the power of the curse law. Having killed the shaman St. Hall's power of laws, he had clearly obtained the power of the curse law from the shaman St. Hall's power of laws. Oh no! Gray had a bad feeling and wanted to teleport away to avoid it. However, he was horrified to find that his teleportation ability, which had always been successful, had failed. The space and air around him seemed to have solidified, sticking him to the spot. Pa pa pa! St. Kaluo's illusory body slowly walked over. Finally, he stood less than a meter in front of Gray, turning from illusory to solid. You must be wondering why you can't teleport, right? The confine ability confines space. The entire space has been constricted, so you naturally can't teleport. St. Kaluo explained with a sinister smile. Between his eyebrows, a golden vertical, I stared at Gray with deep desire. All right, it's time to send you on your way. I can't wait to obtain the puppet ability. St. Kaluo's hand slowly reached for Gray. There was a blood-red light flickering in his hand, which had an inexplicable attraction to flesh and blood. Gray felt as if his blood was about to flow backward and burst out of his body. This should be the seize rule power that St. Kaluo spoke of. He could guess without thinking that once St. Kaluo's hand touched him, something terrifying would definitely happen. I can't care about that anymore. Looking at the hand slowly reaching for him, Gray's eyes were filled with determination as he made a decision. A space-time fluctuation burst out from his body. As this space-time fluctuation was emitted, he suddenly felt the world spin around him. His head was dizzy and his vision blurred, as if he was spinning in a turbulent flow. In fact, he was indeed shuttling through a turbulent flow, but it was not an ordinary turbulent flow of air, but a turbulent flow of space-time. Teleportation could not be used, and his ability was about to be taken away. In such a desperate situation, he could only think of one way to save himself, and that was the ability to return to the past that he had sealed away. This ability was extremely dangerous. The slightest carelessness could lead to an undesirable result. A small change could lead to the disappearance of a close friend who simply did not exist in this world. A small change could lead to an enemy that should have died not dying. In the most serious cases, it could even lead to his own death. For example, because of a small change, one's bloodline ancestor would die before leaving behind a child. As a bloodline descendant, it was naturally impossible for them to continue existing. This was a taboo ability. While it hurt the enemy, it could also hurt himself and the people around him. Because of this, Gray had sealed this ability. Now, he had no choice but to use it again. With his current strength, he could not defeat the current Koro Saint. The only choice was to use his space-time ability to return to the past and attack the young Koro Saint. He chose to go back 50,000 years in the past, because 50,000 years was when the Saint Hunters first appeared. That meant that the opponent must have existed at that time, and his strength should not have been too strong. But whether or not he could return to 50,000 years in the past, he was not sure. When he was first at the magic light level, he could use the return to the past ability to accurately return to a range of 100 years. Beyond the range of 100 years, the time fluctuation would become extremely large. If he wanted to return to 1,000 years ago, he might end up back to 100,000 years ago. Plus, in the past, he could only stay for one day. After reaching the annihilation level, he used it again and found that he could accurately return to a range of 1,000 years. Beyond the range of 1,000 years, there would be extremely large fluctuations. The only thing that made him happy was that as long as he did not want to return, he could even stay in the original time and space for a long time. Schwa. After a long time, Gray's head gradually became clear. His vision was no longer blurry. It indicated that the space-time ability had brought him back to the past. He looked at his surroundings. The next moment, his face became dull. In the wilderness, there was a crooked, muddy road. He was standing in the middle of this muddy road. Around him, there were lush weeds and shrubs. As far as the eye could see, it was like a green carpet. The original space-time temple was gone. The original space-time city was also gone. The space-time temple was built more than 100,000 years ago, but at this time, the space-time temple and space-time city had not been built. That meant that the time and space he was in was at least 100,000 years in the past. More than 100,000 years ago, there was naturally no Saint Kaluo. There was only an unknown ancestor from an unknown place. The plan to kill the young Koros saint had failed. Chapter 809. Do I have to go back to my original time and space to use my time and space powers again? No. If I go back to my original time and space, I might not even have the chance to use my powers. Gray thought about going back to his original time and space to use his back-to-the-past ability, but he immediately rejected the idea. Before the time and space turbulence caused by his back-to-the-past ability calmed down, he could not use it again. During this time, Kaluo's saint could find him and steal his powers. After all, he had the Eye Rule power. Although under normal circumstances, the Rule of Eye's ability was unable to discover people hiding in a plane, Gray seriously suspected that with the other party's realm far surpassing that of an ordinary rule, it was very likely that he could already spy on people hiding in a plane. When he first met him, he was in a dimension. Clearly, even in the source world, he could see what was going on in the dimension. He might have used the Eye Rule power. If I can't go back to my original time and space, do I have to kill his blood ancestor? Let's not even talk about whether or not I can find him. Even if I can find him and kill him, the impact will be too big. If he killed Kaluo Saint's blood ancestor and made Kaluo Saint cease to exist, it would bring a big change to the time and space temple. If the time and space temple had such a big change, it was hard to say if Sophia would have been saved by the time and space temple elder when she first arrived in the source world. His original plan was to find the young Kaluo saint and kill him. Then, he would use his resurrection power to revive him and try to minimize the impact. Clearly, he could not do that now. If I can't go back to my original time and space, I can't find or kill Kaluo saint's blood ancestor. Then, there is only one choice in front of me. That is to stay in this time and space and accumulate enough power to defeat Kaluo Saint. The messy thoughts in Gray's mind became clear, and at this moment, a reprimand suddenly rang in his ears. Go away. He raised his head and looked around. While he was deep in thought, two groups of people had appeared in the field. One group had about 10 people. They were all injured. There were adults and children. The other group had about 30 people. They all had a strong presence. Judging from the presence of the leaders, they were all annihilation class. Now, a group of people was chasing after a group of people in front of them. The yelling came from a middle-aged annihilation class man in the group of people behind them. Gray raised his eyebrows and glared coldly at the person who reprimanded him. Although his level was only at the 6th tier of annihilation class, his battle power was like an old rule class elite. Even rule class elites would not dare yell at him. Now, he was being yelled at by a little annihilation class. Coupled with the matter of Saint Kaluo, his mood became extremely unhappy, and he wanted to flare up, but he held it in. This was a space-time of the past. If he were to casually interfere or even kill someone, it might cause a huge change to the original space-time. He moved to the side to make way. So he's a soft-footed shrimp. Seeing that Gray had obediently stepped aside after being berated, the group behind let out disdainful sneers. They quickly passed by Gray and pounced on the group in front of them. Their strength was obviously stronger than the previous group, and they quickly surrounded the first group. A terrifying battle broke out, and the fierce wind that was stirred up by the battle raged. Ferocious scars appeared on the grassland. With a blood-curdling scream, A young man dressed as a guard was split into two halves. Blood splattered everywhere. Blurg. A middle-aged man dressed as a guard was cut in half at the waist. His intestines spilled all over the ground. Many people dressed as guard were killed. The remaining people were so scared that their faces turned pale, but they still protected the center with their lives. They were protecting a middle-aged man and a little boy in the middle. The two of them wore ancient clothes that made them look very noble. They were obviously of high status. Blurg, blurg. More and more guards were killed. In the end, all the guards were down. Only the middle-aged man and the little boy were left. The middle-aged man was not weak. He was probably at the first tier of annihilation class, but he was facing more powerful enemies. He was covered in wounds. His intestines were spilling out. His eyes were filled with despair and unwillingness. He used his last bit of strength to protect the little boy. The little boy's face was covered in blood. He was crying in fear. He cried, "Daddy!" Far away, Gray looked at the middle-aged man. He frowned. The middle-aged man had purple hair. He looked like Francis. Cough, cough. The purple-haired middle-aged man coughed up blood. The blood was mixed with his intestines. He roared with unwillingness, anger, and resentment. "You're treating my Violet clan like this. Aren't you afraid that my Violet clan's rule-level elite will return?" His loud roar made his injuries worse. A large piece of his intestines was spat out of his mouth. "You're a rule-level elite of the Violet clan?" The middle-aged man who had reprimanded Gray earlier sneered. "You probably don't know. Your Violet clan's saint has passed away in the Void Zone. His bones were found not long ago." "What? The ancestor passed away?" "No, that's impossible." The purple-haired middle-aged man's eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. "Believe it or not, you should be on your way." The middle-aged man who had reprimanded Gray earlier sneered. He raised a knife in his hand and was ready to kill the middle-aged man and the little boy. "Violet clan? Rule-level elite?" Hearing the purple-haired middle-aged man's words, Gray's eyes suddenly shot out a shocked light. All this time, he had been wondering where Sophia's bloodline came from. The Violet clan was only a clan in the dimension with less than 1,000 years of history. How could their bloodline contain the power of the natural order? With the conditions of the dimension, it was not enough to give birth to a 6th-grade annihilation-level existence. Therefore, he judged that the Violet clan was most likely not a native clan of the dimension, but a clan that had moved into the dimension many years ago. Now, seeing that the middle-aged man's appearance was similar to Francis, and hearing that the other party called himself the Violet clan, and that the clan had once produced a rule-level elite, he immediately understood that the middle-aged man and the little boy before him were likely the bloodline ancestors of Sophia, Francis, and the others. Could it be that the Violet clan has taken root in the dimension because of me? A family that had once produced a law-level powerhouse, even if it had declined, should not have taken root in a plane. However, the Violet family had taken root in a plane. There had to be some reason for the Violet family to do so, and now it seemed that this reason was very likely to be him. So, there was no time to think. Gray teleported in front of the middle-aged man and the little boy. If he delayed any longer, the bloodline ancestor of the Violet clan would be cut off. Ching! Gray extended 2 fingers. He easily caught the battle knife that was slashing down with a raging wind. What? Seeing Gray suddenly appear and seeing Gray catch the battle knife with 2 fingers, the middle-aged man who had been yelling at Gray narrowed his eyes. Because the purple-haired middle-aged man was at the end of his rope, he did not use his full power. He did not even use his blood beast power. Even so, it was not something that could be easily blocked. After all, he was annihilation class. Even if it was him, he would not be able to catch his saber with just 2 fingers. "Let go." Holding the battle knife with both hands, he struggled. He wanted to get the battle knife out of Gray's 2 fingers, but he was shocked to find that the battle knife had been caught between Gray's 2 fingers. It was like it had grown a heel. It could not move. Cold sweat rolled down his forehead. He let go of the battle knife and quickly fell back. He looked at Gray with fear. "Be careful. This person is very strong." There were 2 other annihilation class people who noticed that something was wrong. They were an old woman and a young man. The two of them shouted. They brought their people and quickly fell back. They distanced themselves from Gray. Who are you? The young man had blonde hair. He looked at Gray, who was as young as he was, with fear. The man seemed to be around the same age as him, but judging from the fight earlier, he was stronger than him. Although there were such people in the Holy Temple, that was the Holy Son of the Holy Temple. Could it be that the other party was also a Holy Son? Since when are Holy Sons so rare and common? It was so easy to meet them. Mister, we are from the Sun Holy Palace. These two are people that the Sun Holy Palace wants to kill. Please do us a favor. The old woman spoke politely, but she was actually threatening and warning Gray. She used her identity as a member of the Sun Holy Palace to warn him to mind his own business. Get lost, Gray coldly grunted. He could hear the hidden threat and warning in the woman's words. Under normal circumstances, he would not provoke a holy class faction for no reason. This situation was obviously not normal. If he did not save the two of them, Sophia's blood ancestor would die. Sophia, Francis, and the others might not even exist. He would not allow that to happen. A level 6 annihilation class presence spread out from his body. It went toward the group of people. Many people in the crowd could not withstand the presence and fell down. Now, Gray's level was only one step away from Rule Class. He was at least 6 levels higher than most of the people there. With such a big difference in level, these people could not fight back against Gray's presence. She had already pointed out her identity as a member of the Sun Holy Palace, yet the man still did not give her face. The old woman wanted to scold him, but she did not expect a huge presence to spread out. It was like a mountain was pressing down on her. Her body froze. She tried her best to keep her body from being pressed down. Her forehead was sweating. She looked at Gray with fear. An annihilation class giant. Like him, the young man and the middle-aged man who had scolded Gray were also trying their best to resist. Their foreheads were sweating, especially the middle-aged man who had scolded Gray. His body was soaked in sweat. He had just scolded an annihilation class giant. Chapter 8:10. Scram if you don't want to die. Gray's body exuded a terrifying aura that was as heavy as a mountain. It was as if there were many mountains pressing down on him. Gray's voice was cold, and his eyes were indifferent. Let's go. With fear in their eyes, the old woman, young man, and middle-aged man looked at each other and left without hesitation. They didn't even say a word. Judging from the aura alone, they knew that the other party was no longer someone they could deal with. All they needed to do now was to return to the Sun Temple and report this matter to the upper echelons. Then, the upper echelons of the Sun Temple would take over this matter. At this moment, if he were to engage in a battle of words and infuriate the other party and cause the other party to attack, then he would simply be courting death. Or rather, they were surprised that the other party didn't kill them. With the other party's strength, he was completely capable of killing them all to prevent the news from leaking. The Sun Temple was established 500,000 years ago, which means that it shouldn't be more than 500,000 years now. I just don't know what year it is now. Glancing in the direction the three left, Gray withdrew his gaze. If he killed all these people, it would naturally save him a lot of trouble. However, it would easily bring unknown changes to the original space-time. Even if he killed them and controlled them with his resurrection ability, it would definitely cause some changes. Thus, he didn't kill these people. As for the Sun Temple, although it was indeed troublesome, he could still deal with it with his current strength. After all, his current combat power was no weaker than a veteran law rank expert. Looking back at the purple-haired middle-aged man and the child, the purple-haired man had collapsed to the ground due to his heavy injuries. Beside him, the little boy was crying miserably, his bloody face covered in tears. Gray poured a bottle of advanced healing potion into the purple-haired man's mouth, but he couldn't help but frown. The purple-haired man's injuries were too severe. His internal organs were shattered, and even advanced healing potions couldn't save him. If he had life potions, he could save him. Unfortunately, he didn't have any. Cough, cough. The purple-haired man coughed violently. There was blood and internal organs. Sir, I know I can't live, but I really can't stop worrying about him. This is the Violet family's last bloodline. I shamelessly ask you to take him in. "Father, don't leave." Alan, the little boy, looked like he was carved from jade, crying his heart out. "Don't worry, I will take good care of him," Gray solemnly promised. Hearing Gray's promise, the purple-haired middle-aged man seemed to have exhausted the last of his strength. A satisfied smile appeared on his face, and his body went limp, no longer moving, leaving only the little boy's continuous crying. After crying for a long time, the little boy fainted from crying. Gray sighed and brought the little boy into the plane he created. The dimension was one with him, so it had returned to the past with him. At the same time, the remaining members of the Radiant Saint Hall and the Sacred Eye clan that he had hidden in there had arrived with him as well. Lord Gray, seeing Gray appear, a woman with a perfect figure came up to greet him. She was Ba, the former Saint of Light. "Take good care of him." Gray nodded and handed the little boy to her. Then, he left the plane and came to the outside world. Glancing at the corpses of the purple-haired middle-aged man and the guards who followed him, he used his earth ability to bury all the guards together, leaving the purple-haired middle-aged man alone. On the tombstone of the guards of the Violet family, he engraved Tomb of the Loyal Guards of the Violet family. He admired the bravery and loyalty of these guards. Even Gray, who was used to seeing life and death, could not help but be slightly touched by their spirit of bravery and loyalty. On the tombstone of the purple-haired middle-aged man, he engraved Tomb of the Ancestors of the Violet family. He did not know the other party's name, so he could only do so. After doing all this, Gray chose a direction and explored ahead. He needed to find a place with people to inquire about the current time. The Source World did not have a unified time. Almost every Saint-level force had their own time. For example, the Radiant Saint Hall was in the Radiant calendar. The first year of the Radiant Saint Hall was the year of its establishment. The Space-Time Temple was in the Space-Time calendar. The first year of the Space-Time Temple was also the year of its establishment. Although the time was different, it was still possible to calculate how many tens of thousands of years it had been in the modern world. After traveling for several thousand kilometers, Gray discovered a village. The place where he had been before was clearly a place with very few people. The ancestors of the Violet family must have taken advantage of the fact that there were very few people there, so they fled in that direction. However, it was a pity that they were still tracked down. Everyone died, leaving behind only a little boy of a few years old. If he had not saved him, even the last of his bloodline would have been lost. "Who are you?" The small village in front of him was surrounded by wooden fences. On many of the wooden fences, there were claw marks and sword marks of wild beasts. Clearly, the environment around the village was not safe. Gray's arrival immediately caused the people in the village to be on guard. More than a dozen bows were aimed at him from different directions. "I'm just a passerby." Gray spread out his hands, indicating that he had no ill intentions. "What have you come to our village for?" A muscular man with a bare chest stood on a high platform behind the wooden fences and shouted. From his body, there was a very faint aura. Of course, it was compared to Gray. The other party should be a berserker. A small village with a berserker overseeing it was unimaginable in this plane. However, in the Origin world, it was rare and common. Some small cities had king warriors overseeing them. "I want to ask you what time it is now." Gray tried to make himself appear friendly. Asked about the time? The muscular man was clearly a little suspicious. He carefully sized up Gray, but he still spoke. "It's May 21st now. Can you be more specific? Like which year?" "Which year?" The strong man was even more suspicious of Gray's intentions. He made a slight gesture, as if to signal for them to increase their vigilance. After all, it was excusable for them to not remember the date, but to not even remember the year was too abnormal. "Solar calendar year 15142. He stared sharply at Gray as he spoke. "Solar calendar year 15142. It's actually 490,000 years ago." Gray was speechless. The time difference was abnormally large. He wanted to go back 50,000 years, but it was 490,000 years ago. It was almost 10 times the difference. He turned to leave, but he quickly paused and turned back to face the muscular man. As Gray turned again, the atmosphere became a little tense. "What else do you want?" The muscular man's hand was already reaching for the saber hanging at his waist. The fierce aura on his body became even stronger, like a blood beast ready to pounce at any time. He had already suspected that Gray had not come to ask about the time, and now Gray's behavior made his suspicions rise to the highest level. How do I get to the nearest city? Gray glanced at the saber hilt in the muscular man's hand. His expression did not change as he asked this question. Follow the small path 50 miles to the east. The muscular man said in a low voice. Many thanks. Gray nodded slightly, then suddenly collapsed the ground. Bang! As he stomped on the ground, a clear crater appeared, and he used the recoil force to leap into the air, quickly flying towards the east. He was so fast that he had disappeared in a few blinks of an eye. A king-level expert, at least a king-level expert. Looking at the collapse of the ground and the direction in which Gray had disappeared, the muscular man's forehead was covered in cold sweat, and his face was full of shock. The dozen or so people who had pointed their bows at Gray were so scared that they dropped the bows in their hands and fell to the ground. Their faces were full of horror. Just now, they were pointing their bows and arrows at an expert who was at least a king realm expert. They were simply ignorant and fearless. With the other party's strength, if he wanted to kill them, it would be useless no matter how they resisted. Fortunately, the other party did not seem to be angry. Otherwise, it would be a disaster for the village. After dashing forward for more than 50 miles, a stone city appeared in front of Gray. The stone city was completely made of stone, and it had existed for a long time. There were traces of wind on the surface of the stone, and some places were even covered in green moss. This was a city of decent scale, with a few 100,000 permanent residents. There were carriages going in and out of the city gate, some pulling people and some pulling goods. It could be seen that the city's trade was quite prosperous. Following the pedestrian path, Gray walked into the city. The streets were paved with stone slabs and were quite clean. There was no sign of sewage overflowing. Generally, large cities had underground drainage systems, and it was rare for sewage to overflow. Gray found a grocery store and bought the most comprehensive map of the grocery store. He then checked into a tavern and began to think about his next move. He needed to accumulate strength in this space-time to accumulate enough strength to defeat Saint Koro. So for a long time, he was afraid that he would have to survive in this space-time. And I'm afraid that this time will not be short. So he must think about his next plan. Now I have 4 kinds of rule abilities, and I have a lot of rule abilities. What really limits my current strength is the realm. So what I need to improve most now is the realm. I heard that there are some very rare magic herbs that can help to comprehend the rules and can greatly reduce the time to comprehend the rules. I don't know if there's a chance to find such precious magic herbs. The only remaining bloodline of the Violet family must be properly settled and closely protected. If it dies, not only the Violet family will not exist, but even Sophia is likely to disappear. It's just a question of whether to take it with me or send it back to the plane. In addition, I'm afraid that the Sun Temple will not give up in order to eliminate the roots. There will be some trouble, but I'm not afraid. No matter what decision the Sun Temple makes, I'm not afraid. The latest chapter of the Divine Blood Warrior is here. Chapter 811. A few mornings later, Gray was eating in the bar. Sitting across from him was a little boy who looked like he was carved out of jade. It was the little boy he had saved a few days ago, AI Llewellyn. The little boy was holding a knife and fork. He carefully ate his food. He kept looking at Gray. He looked like he was afraid of angering Gray. It made people feel bad for him. His family had gone through a big change. All of his family members had died. He was all alone. The only person he could rely on was someone he had only known for a few days. His young heart was filled with fear and confusion. He was very nervous about the uncertain future. "Do not be nervous," Hansen said. "I am related to you. I am your family." Gray's voice was very soft. "You are my family?" The little boy looked at Gray in surprise and astonishment. "Yes, I am your family." Gray nodded. The little boy looked surprised. He had lost all of his family members. He had no one to rely on. Now, he suddenly knew Gray was his family. He had someone to rely on again. His worried heart suddenly felt a lot better. After breakfast, Gray took the little boy to walk on the busy street. They visited one stall after another. They walked past many people. There were all kinds of food, toys, and people on the street. It helped the little boy get rid of his sadness. He forgot about the horrible things that had happened not too long ago. Woo, woo, woo. At this time, there was a loud noise in the sky. Gray raised his head and looked. He saw a dozen people flying toward the city. When they ran, they created a loud noise. Judging by their speed, the dozen people were all Annihilation class existences. I know you guys are in the city. Get out here. A dozen people flew out of the city. They coldly looked into the city. One of them was an old man. He coldly shouted. A powerful pressure spread out from his body. It was like a rolling landslide going toward the city. It was an Annihilation class 6-tier pressure. Feeling that powerful pressure, the people in the city all fell to the ground. On the busy street, many people were scared to the ground. Their faces were full of fear. It was like the end of the world had come. Some people screamed in horror, while others fainted in fright. Some of them were so frightened that they urinated and defecated. Some of them were so frightened that they were drooling. They were so scared that they were dumbfounded. On the street, there were only 2 people left standing. One of them was Gray, and the other was the little boy, Alan. Because he was close to Gray, he was protected by Gray's pressure and survived. Gray's face was ashen as he looked at the streets full of fallen people. He could guess who these people were. They must be from the Temple of the Sun. These days, he had noticed some suspicious people spying on him, but he didn't care. However, he did not expect the other party to be so unscrupulous, directly exerting pressure on a city with a population of hundreds of thousands, implicating hundreds of thousands of people. Take good care of him. Gray waved his hand and summoning Ba, asking her to take care of the little boy. He then quickly ran out of the city and stood a few hundred meters away from the dozen or so people. I should not have let you guys go. Gray looked at the dozen or so people. In the end, his gaze landed on a blond young man. His eyes looked cold. A few days ago, the reason he did not kill the Temple of the Sun people was because he did not want to interfere with this time and space. He did not want to affect the future. However, he did not expect that the impact of this would be even greater. The other party's unscrupulous actions had affected hundreds of thousands of people in a city. The impact of this was definitely greater than killing a few dozen people. It is not my fault. Being stared at by Gray's cold eyes, the blond young man instinctively took a few steps back. He was panicking as he tried to explain himself. He immediately realized that day was different from a few days ago. He had a few Temple of the Sun Annihilation class big shots next to him. He suddenly felt confident. Do not be so arrogant. This time is different from a few days ago. Many of the Sun Temple Misters are here. You are the one who protected the remaining members of the Violet family? I heard you were an Annihilation class 6th level. The silver-haired young man shot a disdainful glance at the golden-haired young man who had been scared out of his wits. He looked at Gray with suspicion in his eyes. He was the son of Sun Temple's holy son, Elliot. A few days ago, he had heard rumors that Gray was young and had reached the 6th level of Annihilation class. As one of the best of the younger generation, he did not believe such rumors. That was why he had come. Whether a person was old or not could be determined by their presence. The older people's presence was heavy like stagnant water. The younger people's presence was full of life. It was like they had unlimited life force. Gray gave him that feeling. He was sure that Gray was young, but he seriously doubted that Gray had reached the 6th level of Annihilation class. Fine. Let me see if you have the power of a 6th level Annihilation class. Buzz. In the sky, a second sun appeared. It was burning with a golden flame. It was releasing a terrifyingly high temperature. It was coming down from the sky. The ground was drying up. The ground was cracking. The plants were dying and burning. A scary heat wave was boiling like a tide. In the center of it all was Gray. The sun was quickly hitting Gray. Oomph. Gray's face was cold. It looked awful. The people of the Sacred Sun Temple did things one after another without the slightest scruple. They were only a few miles away from a city. If the enemy's attack landed, the entire city would be destroyed. After all, the city was not like the holy palaces. It did not have a powerful defense. Shwa, a purple light, was like the clouds rising in the morning. It shot into the sky. It spread. It went toward the golden sun. Creak. The powerful golden sun dissipated the moment it came into contact with the purple light, as if it was a flame that had encountered extremely cold water. The purple light did not stop, spreading all the way up, leaving behind an extremely long purple glow in the sky. Shwa! Another purple light was like a purple river. It went towards Sun Temple's holy son, Elliot. There was no overpowering presence that could sweep the sky and the ground. It was only a weird silence. It was that silence that made Sun Temple's holy son, Elliot's hair, stand on end. His body felt cold. He felt a sense of danger. He could not block it. His instincts told him that he could not block that attack. If he tried to block it, he would probably die. Following his instincts, he quickly dodged to the side. The purple light was spreading faster than he could dodge. He was about to be covered by the purple light. At this moment, the old man who had released the 6th level Annihilation class power moved in front of him. He protected him behind him. Gold light came out of the old man's body. It turned into many scary lights that could kill Annihilation classes. They went toward the purple light. Under that scary light, the purple light started to dim. It eventually disappeared. It really is the 6th level of Annihilation class. Behind the old man, Sun Temple's holy son, Elliot, was panting. He did not know when, but his forehead was covered in cold sweat. As the strongest of the younger generation of the Sun Temple, he had always been praised and praised. He always liked to use himself as a reference for the others of the younger generation. He didn't believe that Gray, who was around his age, would have a cultivation far greater than his. However, reality was cruel. In front of Gray, he couldn't even block a single attack. Which temple are you from? The old man who blocked the time rule power looked at Gray with a serious expression. His opponent was so young, yet he was already as strong as he was. He could not help but wonder if there was a super scary holy faction behind him. You do not need to know that. Gray wanted to say the Time Temple, but he remembered that the Time Temple had not been created yet. Plus, he had a relationship with the Time Temple. So, he held back and coldly spoke. You only need to know that I will protect the people of the Violet family. From now on, you're not allowed to do anything about the Violet family. Arrogant. An old woman with a crooked back coldly grunted. From her body, there was also a 6th level Annihilation class power. Ignorant. You really think you can do whatever you want just because you have the 6th level of Annihilation class? Do you really think you can fight the Sun Temple? A middle-aged woman with an old-fashioned face stepped forward. From her body, there was also a 6th level Annihilation class power. 3 6th level Annihilation class. Among the dozen people, there were 3 6th level Annihilation class existences. Although they did not believe the reports of the people who had returned, just in case, the Sun Temple had still sent out 3 Annihilation class big shots. It looks like even if I beat you guys, you will not let this go. Suddenly, Gray sighed, and there was a trace of helplessness in his tone. He had tried his best to avoid affecting the time and space, but the Sun Temple was not going to let this go. It was obvious they were not going to give up. There would be a lot of trouble in the future. It would have a big impact on the time and space. Beat them? You? The old-fashioned middle-aged woman sneered. It was like she had just heard the funniest joke. There were 3 Annihilation class big shots there. It was unknown if Han-san could survive, but he still wanted to beat them. No, I am not going to beat you guys. Gray shook his head. Just as the dozen people from the Sun Temple thought Gray was going to admit defeat, Gray raised his head. His eyes looked cold. To prevent something like this from happening again, I'm going to kill all of you. Then, I will go to the Sun Temple. He thought he could force the Sun Temple to retreat without any casualties. He thought he would be able to minimize the impact on the time and space. He knew he was wrong. The Sun Temple's way of doing things was too reckless. They did not care about the impact on the people around them. Of course, that was how most holy factions did things. That day, a few 100,000 people had been affected. After that day, more people would be affected. So he decided to cut the Gordian knot. He was going to use the fastest way to settle this. As for how he was going to do it, he was going to go to the Sun Temple and admit defeat. That was because killing had the strongest impact. Chapter 8:12. How arrogant. The Annihilation Giant Old Man was so angry that he laughed. His eyes were like two fireballs burning. His face was twisted because of his anger. He wanted to kill everyone there, including the three giants. He was going to go to Sun Holy Temple. Arrogance was hard to describe. If one had to describe it, it would have been crazy. Let's not even talk about whether or not he had the power to kill the three giants and a dozen Annihilation elites. Even if he did, if he went to Sun Holy Temple, he would have died. Do you not want to live? The hunchback old woman and the old-fashioned middle-aged woman looked angry. They coldly stared at Gray. You have some power, yet you dare to talk back to Sun Holy Temple. You have a death wish. A young man who had followed them laughed. His laughter was full of mockery. He was an elite of Sun Holy Temple. He was also an Annihilation class. He had followed them there to see the world. He did not expect to run into a madman like that. Although he had some power, he was crazy. He wanted to kill them and go to Sun Holy Temple. Schwa. Gray coldly stared at the young man. The coldness in his eyes was like he was going to freeze the young man. The young man's heart jumped. His heart was beating like crazy. He thought about the fact that he was under the protection of three Annihilation class giants. He was emboldened. What are you staring at? Kill me if you can. After that, he made a gesture of cutting his throat. He was very provocative. I will satisfy you. Gray laughed. He had seen arrogant people, but he had never seen someone so eager to die. If that was the case, he would have to satisfy the young man's wish. So, Gray's figure disappeared from where he stood. When he reappeared, he was less than a meter away from the arrogant young man. Before the arrogant young man could react, Gray's powerful hand had grabbed the arrogant young man's throat and lifted him up. Woo! Woo! Gray grabbed the arrogant young man's neck. He was suffocating. His eyes rolled back. His mouth was making weird noises. In this life and death situation, he instinctively raised his leg to kick Gray. If you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. His eyes were cold. He ignored the arrogant young man's kick. Gray spoke coldly into the arrogant young man's ear. Crack! The hand holding the arrogant young man's neck exerted force, and with a crisp sound, the arrogant young man's throat and spine were instantly shattered. The young man's kicking leg immediately stopped, and his entire body went limp like a shrimp. Boom! Behind him, there was a screaming wind and scary heat coming toward Gray. The air was blown up. There was an ear-piercing scream. The Annihilation Giant Old Man's fist was wrapped in a gold flame that looked like it was going to burn everything. It was coming toward Gray. He was surrounded by people from the Holy Sun Temple. If he attacked directly, the people around him would definitely be injured or even killed. Therefore, he chose to fight in close combat. Bang! Gray turned around. He coldly looked at the Annihilation class giant's flaming fist. A space shield appeared in front of him. It blocked the fierce flaming fist. Violent shock waves spread out, and violent ripples appeared in the air, forming a terrifying vacuum zone. The heat waves were monstrous, but Gray, who was behind the spatial barrier, was not affected in the slightest. Not only that, but one spatial barrier after another appeared in the surroundings, forming a cage. Spatial barrier. The Annihilation class giant old man noticed something was wrong. He chose a direction to run in, but the direction he chose happened to have a spatial barrier. He was blocked. He wanted to choose another direction to run in, but the spatial barrier had already formed a cage. Schwa. Seeing Gray's back facing them, a few normal Annihilation classes hesitated. Their eyes looked cruel. They jumped toward Gray from behind. Hearing the movement, Gray coldly turned around. He waved his hand. A purple light went toward the few normal Annihilation classes. Chi! 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 A creepy scene appeared. The normal Annihilation classes that were covered by the purple light quickly became old. They died and started to rot. In the end, their flesh was gone. Only rotten bones were left. There were many ways to die, but this way of dying was very scary. A few other ordinary Annihilation classes who wanted to go after Gray stopped in their tracks. They felt a chill run down their spines. Time rule power. This is time rule power. You have 2 rule powers. Sun Holy Temple's Holy Son, Elliot screamed. After seeing the effect of time rule power, he was sure that the purple light was time rule power. Coupled with the spatial rule ability, teleportation, The other party actually had two types of rule abilities. Everyone else, back off. The hunchbacked old woman and the old-fashioned, middle-aged woman looked shocked. They ordered the others to back off. The two of them went toward Gray, one on the left and one on the right. Gray ignored the two people who were coming toward him. He grabbed something with his right hand. Ark! There was a scream. The Annihilation class giant old man, who had been trapped in the spatial cage, was deformed. Blood came out of every part of his body. In the end, he did not look like a human anymore. He was squeezed into a bloody ball of flesh by the shrinking spatial barrier. Gray looked at the two people who were coming toward him. He set up two spatial barriers in the direction they were coming from. Pang! Pang! The two people's attacks hit the spatial barriers. Aside from creating a lot of noise and being pushed back by the spatial barriers, there was no other effect. Although they were both 6th-tier Annihilation class, with the acceleration of time rule power, Gray's reaction speed was much faster than the other two's. Hai Dang Elder! You killed Hai Dang Elder. You deserve to die. Looking at the Annihilation class giant old man's body, the hunchbacked old woman and the old-fashioned, middle-aged woman were shocked and angry. They angrily roared. The second and third suns appeared in the sky. The air that destroyed the sky and ground swept out. The scorching heat filled the sky and ground. Everything was covered by it. That included Gray, the city not far away, and the other people from Sun Holy Temple. In the fierce battle where the Annihilation class giants could die, the two of them could not care less. They had given up on those people. They really are fearless. Gray's eyes were as cold as ice. If he allowed the enemy to attack him in such a big area, with the spatial barriers, he would be fine. The city not far away, and the people in the city would all be killed. This proved his theory not long ago. To deal with an arrogant faction like Sun Holy Temple, he had to be quick and decisive. Otherwise, it would affect this space and time even more. Oomph! In front of Gray, a small, black ball appeared. After it appeared, it became a black light that shot out. Pew! Pew! Two sounds of flesh being pierced were heard. In the sky, the angry hunchbacked old woman and the old-fashioned, middle-aged woman both had blood coming out of their bodies. Their chests were pierced from front to back. Their hearts were gone. Blood came out of the holes in front and back. Their bodies fell to the ground. As for the two golden suns in the sky, they lost the support of their powers and instantly dissipated like golden fireworks. The thunder was loud, but the rain was small. It was like that. The three elders. Are they dead? This is not real. How? How is that possible? From when the Annihilation class giant old man was killed to when the hunchbacked old woman and the old-fashioned, middle-aged woman were killed, the time between was very short. It was so short that the people of Sun Holy Temple could not react. They realized the three big shots were all dead. He killed the three elders alone? Run! Run! Sun Holy Temple's holy son Elliot's face was full of fear. His body became a gold light and fled far away. At this moment, he could not help but think of what Gray had said not long ago. Kill them all and go to Sun Holy Temple. Whether or not he could go to Sun Holy Temple did not matter. Killing them all was no longer an arrogant thing to say. The three big shots were dead. Aside from running, the rest of them could not fight back. Run! The others all reacted. They ran in different directions. So, looking at Sun Holy Temple's holy son Elliot and the rest of the people running away, Gray's face was cold. He looked cold. So, taking a step forward, he crossed a distance of several miles and appeared beside a person. With a light flick of his finger, a purple light enveloped this person. Instantly, this person rapidly decayed and turned into a skeleton, falling straight to the ground. He stepped out again. He appeared a few hundred feet away. He appeared next to a blond young man. The blond young man was not just anyone. It was the young man he had encountered a second time. No, don't kill me. The blond young man was terrified and desperately begging for mercy. At this moment, he hated himself as well as the three great leaders. He hated himself for thinking that he would be safe with the three great leaders by his side. He hated himself even more for thinking that the three of them could not defeat a single person. Gray did not say anything. A purple light killed the blond young man. He went after the others. One by one, the Sun Holy Temple people were killed. He finally caught up with the last one. It was Sun Holy Temple's holy son, Elliot. Don't kill me. I am Sun Holy Temple's holy son. I am useful to you. Sun Holy Temple's holy son, Elliot's face was pale. He was sweating. When he saw Gray's murderous eyes, he quickly spoke. Tell me about it. Gray said indifferently. Don't you want to go to Sun Holy Temple? I know the way. I can lead the way for you. Sun Holy Temple's holy son, Elliot's mind spun quickly. Not a bad suggestion. Then lead the way for me. Gray thought about it and felt that it was a good idea. Although he had bought a map, with this world's map technology, the accuracy was worrying. If there was no one to lead the way, it would be inevitable that he would take a wrong turn. Sparing the other party's life and letting him lead the way was a good choice. Through the soul connection, Gray called Ingba and Alan. He then looked at Sun Holy Temple's holy son, Elliot. Lead the way.